Sound has rules, and Echo Lake broke them all. Echo Lake sits at 11,400 feet above sea level, carved into the granite face of Mount Evans like a mirror pressed against stone. The lake earned its name in 1869 when railroad surveyors discovered that a single shout across its waters would return as many as 7 distinct echoes, each one bouncing off the surrounding cliff faces with crystalline precision. For over a century, the acoustic phenomenon drew visitors who came to hear their voices multiply and fade into the thin mountain air. Geologists attributed the effect to the lake's perfect bowl shape and the dense granite walls that rose nearly vertical from the water's edge. The Mount Evans Scenic Byway brought steady traffic to the area after its completion in 1930. Tourists would park at the designated overlook, cup their hands around their mouths, and listen as their calls transformed into a symphony of repetition. Children delighted in the way their laughter seemed to live on in the stone. Even during winter months, when the road closed and the lake froze solid, cross-country skiers and snowshoers would make the difficult trek just to experience the acoustic marvel. The lake's setting contributed to its mystique. Located within the Mount Evans Wilderness area, it remained largely undeveloped, accessible only by a narrow hiking trail that branched off from the scenic highway. The surrounding peaks, Mount Evans to the west, Mount Bierstadt to the south, created a natural amphitheater that focused sound waves with unusual clarity. Weather patterns in the area were notably stable, with minimal wind interference that might disrupt acoustic transmission. These conditions had remained consistent for decades, making Echo Lake a reliable destination for those seeking its unique auditory experience. But in the summer of 1987, visitors began to notice something wrong. Margaret Hendricks, a geology professor from the Colorado School of Mines, first documented the anomaly during a field trip with graduate students on July 15th. Her group had hiked to Echo Lake as part of a study on glacial erosion patterns. When they attempted to demonstrate the lake's famous acoustic properties to her students, nothing happened. Hendricks shouted across the water multiple times, varying her position along the shoreline. Each call disappeared into silence, as though absorbed by the lake itself. "We assumed atmospheric conditions were interfering," Hendricks later told colleagues. But the weather was perfect: clear skies, minimal wind, ideal temperature. I'd been to Echo Lake dozens of times over the years. The acoustics had never failed before. Her students confirmed the experience. David Martinez, one of the graduate researchers, attempted to recreate the echoes by clapping, whistling, and even banging rocks together. None of the sounds returned. The group spent over an hour testing different positions around the lake's perimeter, but the results remained consistent. Sound directed across the water simply vanished. Word of the acoustic failure spread quietly through Colorado's hiking community. By August, multiple independent reports confirmed that Echo Lake's echoes had stopped entirely. The phenomenon wasn't intermittent or weather-dependent. It was complete and absolute. Sounds made near the lake's edge would reflect normally off the surrounding cliffs, but anything directed across the water itself disappeared without trace. Local park rangers initially dismissed the reports as exaggeration or seasonal variation. Ranger Tom Castellanos, who had worked the Mount Evans district for 12 years, insisted the acoustic properties couldn't simply vanish. "Lakes don't just stop echoing," he told concerned visitors. "There has to be a logical explanation." But when Castellanos conducted his own test in early September, he found the reports were accurate. Standing at the same overlook where thousands of tourists had experienced the lake's famous echoes, he shouted his name across the water. The sound died at the water's surface, as if hitting a wall of cotton. Castellanos documented the incident in his daily log, but received no follow-up instructions from park administration. The story might have remained a local curiosity if not for Dr. Patricia Morse, an acoustic engineer from the University of Colorado Boulder. Morse had heard about the Echo Lake anomaly through professional contacts and decided to investigate with proper scientific equipment. In October 1987, she obtained permits to conduct controlled acoustic measurements at the site. Morse's initial tests confirmed the impossible. Using calibrated sound meters and directional microphones, she measured sound transmission across Echo Lake and compared it to baseline readings from nearby bodies of water. The results defied explanation. Sound waves directed across Echo Lake registered zero reflection, complete acoustic absorption that violated basic principles of physics. Water doesn't absorb sound waves completely, Morse explained in her preliminary notes. Even under ideal conditions for absorption, some reflection should occur. What we measured at Echo Lake was physically impossible. Her team expanded the study, using underwater microphones to detect subsurface acoustic activity and seismic equipment to measure vibrations in the lakebed. The underwater recordings revealed something even more disturbing. Sounds made above the water's surface registered normally on the submerged microphones, but they appeared to stop abruptly at a consistent depth of 12 feet, the exact depth where the lake's thermocline typically formed during summer months. The seismic data showed similar anomalies. Sound waves that should have penetrated the lakebed and reflected back simply disappeared at the 12-foot mark, as though hitting a barrier that didn't appear on any sonar mapping of the lake bottom. Morse submitted her findings to the Journal of Acoustic Society of America in December 1987. The paper underwent standard peer review, during which 3 independent acoustic experts attempted to replicate her methodology. 2 of the reviewers confirmed her measurements but questioned her conclusions, suggesting equipment malfunction or environmental factors she had overlooked. Before publication could proceed, Morse received a call from her department chair. The university had decided to redirect funding for her acoustic research toward other projects. When she inquired about the status of her Echo Lake paper, she was told the journal had withdrawn it from consideration pending additional review. The paper was never published. Morse's research files were transferred to the university's Geological Survey Archive, where they joined a growing collection of documents related to the Mount Evans area. A Freedom of Information request, filed in 1992, revealed that the National Park Service had commissioned its own acoustic study of Echo Lake in 1988. The results of that study remain classified. The lake's silence continued through the following years, becoming an accepted reality rather than an investigated mystery. New visitors, unaware of the historical acoustic phenomenon, found nothing unusual about a quiet mountain lake. Guidebooks gradually stopped mentioning Echo Lake's famous echoes, and by the mid-1990s, most references to the acoustic properties had been quietly removed from official park literature. Ranger reports from the period show a notable pattern. Multiple staff members requested transfers from the Mount Evans district between 1988 and 1991. Exit interviews cited atmospheric pressure and elevation fatigue as primary reasons. But several rangers mentioned difficulty sleeping and persistent ringing in their ears during shifts that included Echo Lake patrol duties. Indigenous oral histories of the area, largely overlooked by official investigations, provide additional context. Members of the Arapaho and Cheyenne tribes described Echo Lake using terms that translated roughly to the listening place, or where voices go to hide. These descriptions predate European settlement by en-risen terms. Centuries, suggesting the lake's acoustic properties, or lack thereof, might not be a recent development. Contemporary visitors to Echo Lake encounter a location that appears entirely normal. The water reflects surrounding peaks with perfect clarity. Wildlife thrives in and around the lake. Fishing remains excellent, and the hiking trails show no signs of environmental distress. Yet, the silence persists, absolute and unexplained. On clear mornings, when conditions should favor acoustic transmission, visitors still cup their hands and call across the water. They wait for echoes that never come, standing at the edge of a lake that swallows sound without explanation. Some report an unsettling sensation while visiting, not fear exactly, but the peculiar discomfort of occupying a space where fundamental rules seem suspended. The silence has weight now, presence where absence should not exist. Echo Lake continues to receive visitors who come for hiking, photography, and fishing. Most leave satisfied with their mountain experience, unaware they have encountered something that should not be possible. But a few pause at the water's edge, sensing something missing they cannot name, as though the lake is listening to conversations it will never return. Some construction projects finish themselves, and others erase their own existence. Marshall Pass cuts through the Continental Divide at 10,856 feet above sea level, connecting the Arkansas River Valley with the upper reaches of the Gunnison River drainage. The pass earned its name from Lieutenant William Marshall, who surveyed the route for the Army Corps of Topographical Engineers in 1873. His report described the location as suitable for railroad construction despite challenging grades and seasonal weather complications. The Denver and Rio Grande Railroad completed their narrow-gauge line through Marshall Pass in 1881, creating a vital link between the mining districts of Leadville and the agricultural valleys of the western slope. For over 4 decades, trains carried silver ore, coal, livestock, and passengers across the pass on a daily basis. The route featured 19 miles of track between Poncha Pass and Gunnison, with Marshall Pass representing the most technically demanding section due to steep grades and exposure to severe weather. By 1920, declining mineral production and improved highway transportation had reduced rail traffic significantly. The Denver and Rio Grande officially abandoned the Marshall Pass route in January 1922, removing the rails for scrap metal and leaving behind the roadbed, telegraph poles, and stone culverts. Local ranchers used portions of the abandoned right-of-way for cattle drives, while hunters and fishermen followed the old grade as a convenient trail through otherwise difficult terrain. The infrastructure remained intact, but unused throughout 1922. Snow accumulation during winter months obscured much of the roadbed, but by spring 1923, the abandoned route was clearly visible as a scar across the landscape-graded earth, wooden ties left to rot, and the occasional piece of forgotten hardware marking where trains once ran. On the morning of August 14, 1923, Section Foreman Carl Brennan discovered something that should not have existed. Brennan worked for the Colorado and Southern Railroad, which had acquired maintenance contracts for several abandoned lines throughout the state. His crew was conducting a routine inspection of the Marshall Pass right-of-way to assess salvage opportunities when they crested the summit and found 3 miles of completed track stretching toward Gunnison. The rails appeared brand new standard gauge rather than the narrow gauge originally used on the route, laid on fresh timber ties with clean ballast spread to precise specifications. Telegraph poles stood at regular intervals, strung with new copper wire that gleamed in the morning sunday. The construction quality exceeded anything Brennan had seen in 23 years of railroad work. The track was perfect, Brennan wrote in his official report. Better than perfect. Every spike-driven flush, every joint aligned to the quarter inch. Whoever built it knew their business. Brennan's crew walked the entire length of the mysterious construction, photographing details and documenting measurements. The new track began exactly where the original narrow-gauge line had crossed the Continental Divide and continued east for precisely 3 miles before ending abruptly at a natural rock outcropping. No equipment, tools, or construction debris remained at the site. The work appeared to have been completed in a single operation, with no evidence of the massive logistical effort such construction would require. The crew searched the surrounding area for signs of recent activity. Heavy equipment necessary for railroad construction would have left obvious traces: tire tracks, fuel spills, disturbed vegetation, worker camps. They found nothing. The new track seemed to have materialized, fully formed, as though placed rather than built. Brennan immediately contacted his supervisor in Denver, who referred the matter to the Colorado Public Utilities Commission. By afternoon, a telegram had reached the Denver and Rio Grande offices requesting information about any authorized construction activities in the Marshall Pass area. The railroad replied that they had no crews, contractors, or equipment anywhere near the abandoned route. Word of the mysterious track spread quickly through Colorado's railroad community. Engineers, surveyors, and construction supervisors traveled to Marshall Pass to examine the work firsthand. All agreed the construction quality was exceptional, but none could explain how or when it had been completed. Railroad Detective James Murphy arrived on August 16th to investigate potential theft or vandalism. Murphy had handled dozens of cases involving stolen rails, sabotaged equipment, and fraudulent construction claims. The Marshall Pass situation defied every category in his experience. The materials alone would have cost thousands of dollars, Murphy noted in his case file. Standard gauge rail, hardwood ties, crushed stone ballast, copper telegraph wire, all high-quality stock. Someone invested serious money in this project, but there's no record of materials being shipped to the area and no evidence of construction activity. Murphy interviewed local residents, searching for witnesses who might have seen construction crews or equipment transport. The nearest ranch was 8 miles from the pass, but owner Dorothy Kellerman reported no unusual activity during the previous months. Mail carriers and freight wagons that regularly crossed the pass had noticed nothing out of the ordinary. "We would have heard something," Kellerman insisted. "Sound carries for miles up there, especially at night when crews would have to work to avoid being seen. Railroad construction makes a lot of noise hammering, machinery, shouting. There was nothing like that." The Colorado State Engineers Office dispatched a survey team to document the construction and determine its compliance with railroad safety standards. Chief Surveyor William Hartley found the track alignment met or exceeded all specifications for mainline service, but the precision troubled him. "Curves were calculated to the exact degree," Hartley reported. "Grades held to tolerances I've never seen in field construction. The elevation profile matched the original Denver and Rio Grande survey from 1879, but somehow improved on it. This wasn't just expert work, it was impossible work." Hartley's team attempted to trace the source of construction materials by examining manufacturer markings on rails and hardware. The steel bore stamps from Colorado Fuel and Iron Company's Pueblo Works, but company records showed no sales of standard gauge rail to customers in the Marshall Pass region. The timber ties appeared to have been cut locally, showing sawmill marks consistent with operations near Salida, but those mills had no record of orders for railroad ties. As investigation continued, pressure mounted to resolve the situation quickly. The Colorado Public Utilities Commission needed to determine ownership and liability for the unauthorized construction. If the track remained in place, it represented a significant asset that belonged to someone. If it was removed, the cost of dismantling would fall to the state. On August 22nd, Commission Inspector Robert Hayes traveled to Marshall Pass to conduct a final assessment before issuing official findings. He arrived at dawn with a crew of photographers and stenographers, intending to create a complete documentary record of the mysterious construction. The track was gone. Where 3 miles of pristine railroad had existed 8 days earlier, Hayes found only the original abandoned roadbed. No rails, no ties, no telegraph poles, no ballast. The right-of-way appeared exactly as it had before August 14th, neglected, overgrown, clearly unused for months. Hayes ordered his crew to search the entire area for signs of recent removal activity. Dismantling 3 miles of track would require heavy equipment, large crews, and multiple freight cars to haul away the materials. Such an operation would leave unmistakable evidence across the landscape. They found geometric depressions in the earth where railroad ties had rested, spaced at precise intervals for exactly 3 miles. The depressions measured 4 inches deep and 8 inches wide, dimensions that matched standard gauge construction, but showed no signs of the settling and weathering that would occur over time. The impressions appeared fresh, as though the ties had been lifted minutes rather than hours earlier. Soil samples taken from the depressions revealed compaction patterns consistent with heavy weight distribution, but laboratory analysis found no trace of creosote, oil, or other chemical treatments typically used in railroad construction. The earth showed compression without contamination, weight without contact. Hayes submitted his report with a recommendation that the matter be classified as a surveying error or administrative confusion. His photographs clearly documented the absence of any railroad construction at Marshall Pass, and interviews with local residents confirmed no unusual activity in the area. The Colorado Public Utilities Commission closed the case in September 1923, filing it under Resolved No Action Required. Carl Brennan's original report and photographs were transferred to the state archives, where they remained accessible to researchers until 1957, when fire damaged the storage facility and destroyed several file cabinets of railroad documents. Modern topographical surveys of Marshall Pass show no evidence of the 1923 construction incident. The abandoned Denver and Rio Grande right-of-way remains clearly visible as a scar across the landscape, but aerial photographs reveal no anomalous patterns or disturbances that might indicate temporary railroad construction. Hikers and hunters who follow the old railroad grade occasionally report finding metal fragments embedded in the soil, pieces of rail spikes, fragments of wire, chips of ballast stone. These artifacts appear weathered and old, as though they had been underground for decades, but they occur in locations where no railroad was ever built. The geometric depressions documented by Inspector Hayes in 1923 still appear in the earth during certain seasons, when snowmelt and spring runoff reveal subtle variations in ground level. The patterns extend for exactly 3 miles along the Continental Divide, spaced at intervals that match standard gauge railroad construction, marking the footprint of something that existed for 8 days and then erased itself as methodically as it had appeared. Sometimes the most dangerous messages are the ones that arrive precisely on schedule. The North American Aerospace Defense Command operates from inside Cheyenne Mountain, a granite fortress carved 2,000 feet into the Colorado Rockies near Colorado Springs. Construction began in 1961, creating a self-contained city designed to survive direct nuclear attack. The facility houses blast-resistant buildings suspended on giant springs, protected by steel doors weighing 25 tons each. Within this mountain, military personnel monitor North American airspace 24 hours a day, tracking everything from commercial aircraft to intercontinental ballistic missiles. NORAD's communication systems represent the most sophisticated electronic surveillance network ever constructed. Satellite downlinks, radar installations, and radio monitoring equipment capable of detecting signals across the entire electromagnetic spectrum feed into the mountain's central processing facility. Operators work in shifts around massive displays showing real-time tracking data from across the continent. The facility maintains multiple redundant communication channels with the Pentagon, Strategic Air Command, and allied military installations worldwide. The mountain's isolation contributes to its security. Located within the Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Station, the facility sits at an elevation of 6,000 feet, surrounded by restricted airspace and multiple layers of physical barriers. Electronic countermeasures prevent unauthorized signals from entering or leaving the complex. Every transmission received by NORAD equipment undergoes automatic analysis to determine origin, frequency characteristics, and potential security implications. During the Cold War, the facility operated under constant threat assessment protocols. Any unexpected communication triggered immediate investigation by specialized teams trained to identify foreign intelligence operations, equipment malfunctions, or atmospheric interference. The system was designed to prevent exactly the kind of incident that began on March 8, 1979. At 14:47 hours, Mountain Standard Time, Communications Specialist 3rd Class Janet Morrison detected an unauthorized transmission on emergency frequency 121.5 MHz, the International Aviation Distress Channel. The signal consisted of a male voice speaking in clear, unaccented English. 72 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds. The transmission lasted exactly 3 seconds and repeated every hour for the next 3 days. Morrison immediately reported the incident to her supervisor, Technical Sergeant Robert Kellner, who initiated standard protocol for unknown signal identification. Kellner's team ran the transmission through voice analysis software and compared it to known radio operators throughout North America. The voice pattern matched no existing records. Signal triangulation equipment failed to establish a point of origin despite clear reception on multiple monitoring stations. The transmission appeared to originate from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. "We checked everything," Morrison later told investigators. Equipment malfunction, atmospheric bounce, foreign interference. The signal was too clean for natural phenomena and too consistent for random transmission. Someone was broadcasting that countdown deliberately. The voice continued its hourly announcements with mechanical precision. 71 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds. Then, exactly 60 minutes later, 70 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds. The countdown never varied in timing, duration, or vocal characteristics. Background noise remained completely absent, suggesting professional broadcast equipment and controlled acoustic environment. NORAD's Electronic Warfare Division attempted to jam the transmission using high-powered interference generators. The countdown continued unaffected. They tried to trace the signal using mobile direction-finding equipment positioned throughout Colorado and neighboring states. All readings pointed toward Cheyenne Mountain itself, as though the transmission originated from inside the facility. On March 11th, as the countdown approached 0, Base Commander Colonel William Hayes ordered the facility to Threat Condition Delta maximum security status. All personnel underwent additional screening, and external communication was temporarily suspended. At exactly 14:47 hours, 72 hours after the countdown began, the voice announced 0 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds. Then silence. Base security conducted a complete facility inspection, searching for hidden transmitting equipment or evidence of infiltration. They found nothing. Electronic countermeasures teams swept every room for unauthorized devices. Communications equipment underwent comprehensive diagnostic testing. All systems operated normally, showing no signs of compromise or malfunction. The incident might have been dismissed as isolated equipment failure if not for what happened exactly 30 days later. On April 7th, at 14:47 hours, the same voice returned. 72 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds. The transmission characteristics matched the previous event. Exactly same frequency, same duration, same vocal pattern. NORAD operators who had monitored the first countdown immediately recognized the voice. Captain Lisa Rodriguez, who had served as watch officer during both incidents, coordinated the second investigation. Her team prepared more sophisticated monitoring equipment and expanded their search for the transmission source. The results duplicated the first event in every detail. After exactly 72 hours, the countdown reached 0 and stopped. "We knew we were dealing with something systematic," Rodriguez reported. "This wasn't random interference or equipment problems. Someone was running a schedule, testing our responses, or sending a message we didn't understand." The pattern continued monthly throughout 1979 and 1980. 13 separate countdown events, each beginning at exactly 14:47 hours, Mountain Standard Time, on dates that followed no obvious pattern, sometimes the 7th, sometimes the 15th, occasionally the 23rd. The voice never varied. The timing remained precise, and all attempts to trace or interrupt the transmissions failed. NORAD brass initially assumed foreign intelligence operations, possibly Soviet attempts to test American defensive readiness. The Strategic Air Command tasked multiple intelligence agencies with identifying the transmission source and determining potential security implications. The Federal Bureau of Investigation interviewed former NORAD personnel who might have access to facility communication codes. The National Security Agency analyzed the signal characteristics for hidden data or coded messages. All investigations reached the same conclusion: the transmissions should not have been possible. The signal bypassed every security system we had, admitted Colonel Hayes in a classified debrief. Our equipment detected it clearly, but couldn't locate it. That's like hearing someone speaking in your living room while being certain no one else is in the house. The Defense Intelligence Agency commissioned acoustic analysis by voice recognition experts from the University of Colorado. Dr. Patricia Hoffman's team studied recordings of all 13 countdown events, searching for clues about the speaker's identity, geographic origin, or psychological state. Their findings added to the mystery rather than resolving it. The voice showed no signs of stress, fatigue, or emotional variation across 18 months of transmissions, Hoffman noted in her classified report. Speech patterns suggested native English speaker, probably male, age 30 to 50, but with characteristics that seemed almost artificially neutral. It was like listening to a computer simulation of human speech, but using 1970s technology that couldn't produce such effects. More disturbing was the temporal precision. Each countdown lasted exactly 72 hours from first transmission to final announcement. Atomic clocks confirmed the timing accurate to within milliseconds. Even professional broadcasters using synchronized equipment would struggle to maintain such consistency over multiple events spanning 18 months. The final countdown began on January 23, 1981. Following the established pattern, NORAD operators, now familiar with the routine, prepared to monitor the 13th event. Electronic warfare specialists had developed new signal tracking technology specifically designed to locate the transmission source. This time, they were confident of success. The countdown proceeded normally for 67 hours. Then, at hour number 5 remaining, the transmission changed. Instead of the standard announcement, the voice said, "Thank you for your attention. This concludes the broadcast schedule." The signal never returned. NORAD's comprehensive investigation produced no answers. The transmission equipment that had somehow penetrated the most secure communication facility in North America vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. Voice analysis files were classified at the highest security levels. Personnel involved in the investigation received transfers to other assignments, and the incident was removed from official facility records. Freedom of Information Act requests filed during the 1990s seeking NORAD communication logs from 1979 to 1981 were denied on national security grounds. The few documents released contained heavy redactions that rendered them uninformative. Most references to the countdown transmissions have been permanently classified. Current NORAD personnel show no awareness of the incidents. New security protocols implemented during the 1980s include automated monitoring systems designed to prevent unauthorized access to communication frequencies. Whether these measures address the specific anomalies of the countdown transmissions remains unclear. The only physical evidence consists of digital recordings stored in classified archives, documenting a voice that spoke to the most secure military installation in North America for 18 months, then politely ended the conversation and disappeared. Somewhere in the mountain's electronic memory, 13 identical countdowns mark time toward conclusions that never came. Messages from a source that revealed itself only through absence, leaving behind the unsettling certainty that someone was paying very close attention. Nature follows patterns, but sometimes those patterns follow rules that nobody wrote. Rabbit Ears Pass crosses the Continental Divide at 9,426 feet above sea level, connecting North Park in Jackson County with the Yampa River Valley near Steamboat Springs. The pass earned its name from two distinctive granite peaks that rise like sentinel ears above the highway, visible for miles across the surrounding parkland. United States Highway 40 follows the route first traveled by Ute hunting parties, then fur trappers in the 1820s, and finally railroad surveyors who mapped the region for the Denver and Salt Lake Railroad. The Continental Divide represents more than a geographic boundary. It marks the point where water flows toward different oceans, where weather patterns shift, and where ecosystems transition between mountain and high plains environments. At Rabbit Ears Pass, this division creates dramatic contrasts. The western slope receives heavier snowfall and supports dense coniferous forests, while the eastern approach opens into the broad grasslands of North Park, where winter winds can reach hurricane force across miles of open terrain. Highway construction through the pass began in 1938 as part of a federal project to improve transportation between Colorado's mountain communities and the agricultural regions of northwestern Colorado. Engineers chose the route for its relatively gentle grades and stable geology, avoiding the rockfall zones and avalanche paths that plagued other mountain crossings. The road opened to year-round traffic in 1941, becoming a vital link for ranchers, loggers, and tourists traveling between the Front Range and the resort communities of the Yampa Valley. Weather monitoring equipment installed at the pass in 1955 provided the first systematic measurements of local atmospheric conditions. The station recorded temperature, precipitation, wind speed, and barometric pressure at 15-minute intervals, contributing data to regional forecasting models and agricultural reports for North Park ranchers. On September 12, 1963, National Weather Service technician Harold Morrison discovered something that violated basic meteorological principles. Morrison was conducting routine calibration of the weather station equipment when he noticed inconsistent temperature readings between instruments located on opposite sides of the Continental Divide. The eastern sensor, positioned 50 yards from the divide marker, recorded a temperature of 42 degrees Fahrenheit. The western sensor, at identical elevation and exposure, showed 49.3 degrees. Morrison assumed equipment malfunction and replaced both sensors with newly calibrated instruments. The temperature differential persisted. He moved the sensors to different locations, adjusted their heights, and verified their accuracy against portable thermometers. The western side of the divide consistently measured 7.3 degrees warmer than the eastern side. "I checked everything I could think of," Morrison wrote in his maintenance log. Wind exposure, ground reflection, elevation differences, instrument shielding. The temperature gap stayed exactly the same, 7.3 degrees. Every measurement, every location. Morrison reported the anomaly to his supervisor at the National Weather Service Regional Office in Denver. Meteorologist Janet Caldwell assumed the discrepancy resulted from microclimate effects common in mountain environments. She instructed Morrison to document the pattern for several weeks before determining whether additional investigation was warranted. Morrison's logs from September and October 1963 show the temperature differential remained constant regardless of weather conditions. During clear days, cloudy periods, precipitation events, and major storm systems, the western side of the divide measured exactly 7.3 degrees warmer than the eastern side. Time of day had no effect. Seasonal temperature changes occurred simultaneously on both sides, maintaining the precise differential even as absolute temperatures varied by 50 degrees or more. The consistency troubled Morrison, who had worked with weather monitoring equipment for 12 years. Natural temperature variations in mountain terrain typically fluctuated based on solar heating, wind patterns, and thermal mass differences. Fixed temperature differentials suggested artificial heating sources or measurement errors, but Morrison could find no evidence of either. Word of the Rabbit Ears temperature anomaly spread through Colorado's meteorological community during winter 1963. Several Weather Service technicians traveled to the pass to verify Morrison's findings with independent equipment. All confirmed the 7.3-degree differential. Dr. Robert Chen, an atmospheric physicist from Colorado State University, arrived in March 1964 to conduct more sophisticated measurements. Chen's team used precision thermometers, infrared sensors, and soil temperature probes to map thermal patterns across the entire pass area. Chen's investigation revealed that the temperature differential extended underground. Soil temperatures at depths of 3, 6, and 12 feet showed the same 7.3-degree difference between east and west sides of the divide. The thermal boundary ran in a perfectly straight line along the Continental Divide for approximately 2 miles, then disappeared as the terrain dropped toward lower elevations. The underground measurements eliminated surface heating effects, Chen explained in his preliminary report. Solar radiation, wind cooling, and snow cover influence surface temperatures, but they don't penetrate to 12-foot depths. We were looking at something that affected the Earth itself. Chen's team attempted to identify geological factors that might explain the thermal anomaly. Core samples revealed identical rock compositions on both sides of the divide. Groundwater surveys found no hot springs, geothermal vents, or underground water flow that might transfer heat from one area to another. Magnetic field measurements detected no unusual mineral deposits that could generate electromagnetic heating. The investigation expanded to include seismic monitoring equipment designed to detect underground activity that might indicate geothermal processes. Sensitive instruments recorded no earthquake activity, underground water movement, or gas emissions that could account for the temperature differential. Dr. Patricia Williams, a geologist from the Colorado School of Mines, joined the investigation in June 1964. Williams suspected that unknown mineral deposits or underground geological structures might create localized heating effects. Her team used ground-penetrating radar and gravimetric surveys to map subsurface features along the thermal boundary. We found nothing unusual, Williams reported. The geology on both sides of the divide appears identical, down to at least 100 feet. No caves, no mineral veins, no structural differences that would explain a temperature gradient. The heating source, if it exists, operates by mechanisms we don't understand. The Colorado Geological Survey commissioned additional studies during 1965 and 1966, hoping to resolve the mystery before it attracted unwanted attention from non-scientific sources. Teams of geophysicists, climatologists, and environmental engineers converged on Rabbit Ears Pass with increasingly sophisticated equipment. All reached the same conclusion: the temperature differential was real, consistent, and unexplainable. The final official report, submitted to the Colorado Geological Survey in December 1966, documented the thermal anomaly but offered no theories for its cause. The 7.3-degree temperature difference defied known principles of geology, meteorology, and physics. The phenomenon appeared to violate conservation of energy unless some unknown heat source was operating along the Continental Divide. Publication of the findings was delayed pending additional review. The Colorado Geological Survey requested consultation with the United States Geological Survey and the National Science Foundation before releasing information that might generate scientific controversy or public speculation. In March 1967, the National Weather Service quietly discontinued temperature monitoring at Rabbit Ears Pass. Official records cite budget constraints and equipment maintenance costs as reasons for closing the station. Morrison was transferred to a weather monitoring facility in Nebraska, and Dr. Chen received a research grant that required him to relocate to Alaska. The temperature differential research files were transferred to the National Archives in 1968, where they remained accessible to researchers until 1974. A routine file review that year resulted in the documents being reclassified as restricted access pending scientific evaluation. Requests to examine the files since that time have been denied on the grounds that the research remains incomplete. Modern temperature monitoring along Highway 40 relies on automated sensors that report to regional weather stations. These systems are not designed to detect localized temperature variations and provide no data about conditions specifically at the Continental Divide. Visitors to Rabbit Ears Pass today find no mention of the temperature anomaly in interpretive signs or park literature. Hikers occasionally report noticing temperature differences when crossing from one side of the divide to the other, but most attribute the sensation to elevation changes or wind exposure. The phenomenon persists, unmarked and unacknowledged. On any given day, regardless of season or weather, the western side of the Continental Divide at Rabbit Ears Pass remains 7.3 degrees warmer than the eastern side, as though the Earth itself recognizes a boundary that exists only in the silent space between what can be measured and what can be explained. Some flights never land, and others refuse to stay grounded. Denver International Airport opened on February 28, 1995, replacing the aging Stapleton International Airport as Colorado's primary aviation hub. Built on 53 square miles of prairie 25 miles northeast of downtown Denver, the facility represented the largest airport construction project in United States history. The distinctive white-peaked terminal, designed to evoke the Rocky Mountains, housed the most advanced air traffic control systems available, capable of handling over 150 aircraft movements per hour. The airport's isolation contributed to its operational efficiency. Located on former ranch land far from residential development, Denver International offered unlimited expansion potential and minimal noise complaints. 6 parallel runways stretched across the flat terrain, each over 2 miles long and designed to accommodate the largest commercial aircraft. The control tower rose 327 feet above the terminal, providing controllers with unobstructed views across the entire airfield and surrounding prairie. Advanced radar and communication systems monitored all aircraft within a 200-mile radius of the airport. Primary surveillance radar tracked aircraft positions regardless of transponder status, while secondary radar systems received identifying information broadcast by individual aircraft. The two systems operated independently, providing redundant coverage that made equipment failure or false readings virtually impossible. Air traffic control operations at Denver International followed strict Federal Aviation Administration protocols developed over decades of commercial aviation. Every aircraft movement was recorded, logged, and archived. Flight plans underwent multiple verification steps before approval. Controllers maintained constant radio contact with pilots throughout approach, landing, and departure procedures. The system was designed to prevent exactly the kind of incident that began on Tuesday, September 5, 1995. At 23:47 hours, approach controller Sarah Martinez detected an unscheduled aircraft on her radar display. The target appeared 15 miles northwest of the airport, traveling southeast at an altitude of 8,000 feet and a ground speed of 210 knots. The aircraft's transponder transmitted identification code 3754, corresponding to Western Pacific Flight 87, a Boeing 737, scheduled for regular service between Los Angeles and Denver. Martinez attempted radio contact with the aircraft, but received no response. She checked her flight plan database for Western Pacific 87 and found no scheduled arrival at that time. The last documented Western Pacific Flight 87 had crashed during approach to Colorado Springs on November 12, 1994, killing all 132 passengers and crew members. I assumed someone was using an old transponder code by mistake, Martinez later told investigators. Equipment gets recycled, numbers get reassigned, but when I tried to establish contact, nobody answered. The aircraft just continued on the same heading. Martinez alerted her supervisor, who contacted Western Pacific Airlines to verify aircraft registration and flight status. The airline confirmed that no Western Pacific aircraft were scheduled to arrive at Denver International that evening. More disturbing, they reported that transponder code 3754 had been permanently retired following the Colorado Springs accident. The radar contact continued for 11 minutes, following a precise approach path toward Denver International's runway 34 left. At 23:58 hours, the target disappeared from both primary and secondary radar displays simultaneously. No aircraft landed on runway 34 left that evening. Martinez filed a comprehensive incident report, documenting the radar contact, transponder information, and attempted radio communications. The Federal Aviation Administration's Technical Operations Center reviewed the report and scheduled an investigation for the following week. Before that investigation could begin, the same radar contact appeared again on Tuesday, September 12th, at exactly 23:47 hours. Air Traffic Supervisor James Powell monitored the second incident personally, using multiple radar displays and recording equipment to document the event. The aircraft appeared at the identical location, transmitted the same transponder code, and followed the same approach path for exactly 11 minutes before disappearing. Radio attempts produced no response. Powell expanded the investigation to include maintenance checks on all radar equipment. Technical teams verified that both primary and secondary radar systems operated normally with no equipment malfunctions or calibration errors. The radar contacts appeared genuine, displaying all characteristics of actual aircraft, including Doppler velocity readings and altitude variations consistent with normal flight operations. The signatures looked completely authentic, Powell explained in his official report, not electronic interference or equipment ghosts. The radar was tracking something real, something with the mass and movement characteristics of a commercial aircraft. The pattern continued weekly throughout September and October 1995. Every Tuesday at 23:47 hours, Western Pacific Flight 87 appeared on radar screens, transmitted its retired transponder code, and flew toward Denver International Airport, before vanishing exactly 11 minutes later. Federal Aviation Administration investigators initially suspected equipment malfunction despite negative test results. They replaced radar transmitters, upgraded computer software, and installed additional monitoring equipment designed to detect false targets or electronic interference. The weekly appearances continued unchanged. National Transportation Safety Board investigator Catherine Wells joined the investigation in November 1995, bringing expertise in aircraft accident reconstruction and electronic systems analysis. Wells reviewed the original crash investigation from Colorado Springs, searching for connections between the accident and the recurring radar contacts. Flight 87 had crashed during a routine approach in severe weather conditions. The aircraft struck terrain 3 miles short of the runway due to pilot error during an instrument approach. The wreckage was completely destroyed, and both flight recorders indicated normal aircraft systems operation until impact. No unusual circumstances surrounded the accident. There was no reason for that aircraft to appear on radar anywhere, Wells noted in her investigation summary. The wreckage was accounted for. The airline had retired the registration numbers, and the route had been permanently canceled. Yet something was broadcasting the correct transponder code and following the original flight path. Wells coordinated with military radar installations to determine whether the contacts appeared on other tracking systems. Peterson Air Force Base, located 60 miles south of Denver, confirmed detecting the same weekly radar target on their surveillance equipment. The signatures matched commercial aircraft parameters and appeared consistently at the predicted times. The Federal Aviation Administration commissioned acoustic analysis teams to investigate whether actual aircraft might be flying the route without authorization. Sound monitoring equipment positioned around Denver International detected no aircraft engines or atmospheric disturbances during the times when radar showed Western Pacific Flight 87 approaching the airport. More sophisticated investigation revealed additional anomalies. The radar contacts always appeared during clear weather conditions, regardless of actual meteorological conditions at the time. Even during snowstorms or severe weather that would ground normal aircraft operations, the Phantom flight maintained its schedule with no acknowledgement of environmental factors that should have affected flight operations. Review of archived radar data revealed that the contacts had begun appearing exactly 10 months after the original accident. The timing suggested either deliberate commemoration or systematic equipment anomaly, but Federal Aviation Administration technicians could find no evidence supporting either theory. Throughout 1996 and 1997, Federal Aviation Administration officials considered various explanations for the recurring contacts. Theories ranged from atmospheric reflection of old radar signals to deliberate electronic hoaxes by former airline employees seeking to honor crash victims. Investigation teams found no evidence supporting any proposed explanation. The Federal Aviation Administration's final report, classified as administrative use only, acknowledged the existence of the weekly radar contacts, but offered no conclusions about their origin or nature. The report recommended continued monitoring, while noting that the phenomenon posed no apparent safety risks to normal airport operations. Weekly documentation continued through 2002, creating an archive of over 400 identical radar contacts spanning 8 years. Each incident followed the same pattern: appearance at 23:47 hours, 11-minute duration, identical flight path, no radio response, sudden disappearance. On Tuesday, March 4, 2003, Western Pacific Flight 87 failed to appear for the first time since September 1995. Controllers, who had monitored the weekly phenomenon for years, waited at their radar displays, but no contact appeared at the expected time. The Phantom flight never returned. Federal Aviation Administration records from the period remain partially classified, with sections related to the investigation techniques and equipment specifications redacted from public releases. Personnel involved in the multi-year investigation received transfers to other facilities, and most declined to discuss their experiences with the recurring radar contacts. Denver International Airport continues normal operations with no acknowledgement of the 8-year period when a crashed aircraft appeared weekly on radar screens. Modern digital radar systems have replaced the equipment that tracked Western Pacific Flight 87, but archived data preserves the electronic signature of something that insisted on completing a journey that ended in wreckage 8 years before the airport even opened. The records remain in Federal Aviation Administration databases, documenting 411 appearances of an aircraft that existed only in electronic memory, flying toward a destination it could never reach, maintaining a schedule that honored nothing except the absolute precision of its own impossible persistence. Some bodies of water hold more than they were designed to contain. Blue Mesa Reservoir stretches 20 miles through the Gunnison River Valley in west-central Colorado. Created by the Blue Mesa Dam, completed in 1966. The dam stands 342 feet high, impounding water from the Gunnison River and its tributaries to form Colorado's largest body of water by surface area. Located within the Curacanti National Recreation Area, the reservoir serves multiple purposes: flood control, hydroelectric power generation, irrigation storage, and recreation for the growing population of the western slope. Construction of Blue Mesa Dam required extensive geological surveys to ensure the stability of both the dam structure and the reservoir basin. Engineers from the Bureau of Reclamation spent 3 years mapping the Gunnison River Canyon, documenting bedrock formations, soil depths, and the precise elevation of the original riverbed. These surveys, completed between 1962 and 1964, established that the canyon floor ranged from 60 to 120 feet below the eventual reservoir's high water mark. The Gunnison River had carved its channel through layers of Precambrian granite and metamorphic rock over millions of years, creating a relatively narrow canyon with steep walls and a stable bottom. Geological assessments found no evidence of cave systems, underground voids, or unstable rock formations that might complicate reservoir construction. The bedrock appeared solid and uniform throughout the planned impoundment area. Dam construction proceeded without incident. As water levels rose behind the completed structure, the reservoir filled according to engineering predictions. By summer 1967, Blue Mesa Reservoir had reached its designed capacity of 940,000 acre-feet, creating a recreational destination that attracted boaters, fishermen, and tourists from across Colorado and neighboring states. Initial depth measurements confirmed engineering expectations. The deepest sections of the reservoir, located near the dam face, measured approximately 280 feet, consistent with the original canyon depth, plus the height of impounded water above the old riverbed. On August 14, 1976, hydrographic surveyor Martin Caldwell discovered something that contradicted 10 years of established measurements. Caldwell worked for the Colorado Water Conservation Board, conducting routine bathymetric surveys to monitor sediment accumulation and water storage capacity. His assignment at Blue Mesa Reservoir involved updating depth charts used for recreation management and dam safety assessments. Using a precision sonar unit mounted on a small survey boat, Caldwell began systematic depth measurements starting from the reservoir's eastern end. The sonar readings appeared normal for the first 12 miles of survey work. Depths varied between 40 and 160 feet, matching historical data and engineering projections. But as Caldwell approached the reservoir's deeper western sections, his equipment began recording measurements that exceeded the known canyon depth. Near mile marker 18, approximately 2 miles from the dam, Caldwell's sonar indicated a bottom depth of 420 feet. According to Bureau of Reclamation surveys, the original canyon floor at that location had measured 110 feet below the high water mark. The sonar was detecting an additional 310 feet of depth that should not have existed. "I assumed equipment malfunction at first," Caldwell noted in his survey log. 420 feet would put the bottom well below the original riverbed. But I ran multiple readings from different positions, and they all showed the same result. Caldwell used a weighted line to verify the sonar measurements manually. The line descended 418 feet before reaching bottom, confirming the electronic readings. He marked the location with GPS coordinates and continued his survey, discovering similar depth anomalies across approximately 3 square miles of the reservoir's western section. The deepest reading occurred near the old Gunnison River channel, where sonar indicated a bottom depth of 478 feet. Bureau of Reclamation records showed the original canyon floor at that point had been 86 feet below the eventual waterline. The additional depth measured 392 feet beyond the known geological baseline. Caldwell reported his findings to the Colorado Water Conservation Board on August 20th. Chief Hydrologist Dorothy Chen initially assumed surveying errors or equipment problems, but she authorized a follow-up investigation using different sonar equipment and additional personnel. The second survey, conducted in September 1976, confirmed Caldwell's measurements. Senior hydrographer Robert Martinez used state-of-the-art bathymetric equipment borrowed from the United States Geological Survey to map the anomalous depths. His readings matched Caldwell's within 3 feet, establishing that significant sections of Blue Mesa Reservoir were far deeper than engineering specifications indicated they should be. The depth anomalies covered roughly 3 square miles in a pattern that followed the old river channel. Martinez documented in his official report. Maximum depth reached 478 feet, which places the bottom nearly 400 feet below the original canyon floor. That's impossible unless the bedrock has somehow eroded or collapsed since the reservoir was filled. The Colorado Water Conservation Board contacted the Bureau of Reclamation to request access to original construction surveys and geological assessments. Dam safety engineers expressed immediate concern about potential structural undermining if unknown voids existed beneath the reservoir. A comprehensive investigation was authorized to determine whether the depth anomalies posed risks to dam integrity. Dr. Patricia Williams, the same geologist who had investigated temperature anomalies at Rabbit Ears Pass, led the geological assessment. Williams' team used side-scan sonar to create detailed bottom contour maps and core drilling equipment to sample sediments from the deepest areas. The sonar mapping revealed that the extra depth appeared in discrete sections rather than gradual slopes. Bottom contours showed sharp transitions from normal depth to anomalous depth, as though portions of the canyon floor had simply dropped away. The transitions occurred along straight lines that bore no relationship to natural erosion patterns or geological structures. Core samples extracted from the deepest sections produced unexpected results. Instead of finding loose sediment that might indicate recent erosion or collapse, Williams' team recovered core samples showing undisturbed sedimentary layers extending to the full depth of their drilling equipment. The sediment appeared to have been deposited over decades or centuries, not the 10 years since the reservoir's creation. The core samples showed no evidence of recent geological activity, Williams reported. No collapsed debris, no erosion patterns, no disturbance layers that would indicate the canyon floor had dropped since 1966. The sediment looked like it had been accumulating naturally for much longer than the reservoir has existed. Williams commissioned seismic surveys to map bedrock structures beneath the anomalous depths. The results contradicted both the original engineering surveys and basic geological principles. Seismic reflections indicated solid bedrock at depths that placed it 400 feet below the original canyon floor measurements. The United States Geological Survey joined the investigation in spring 1977, providing additional equipment and expertise in underwater geology. Their analysis confirmed that the Blue Mesa depth anomalies could not be explained by known geological processes. Dr. Richard Chen, no relation to Dorothy Chen at the Water Conservation Board, headed the Geological Survey team. His investigation focused on identifying possible mechanisms that could create additional depth in an artificial reservoir without leaving evidence of the process. "We considered every possibility," Chen explained in his classified summary. Underground limestone dissolution, volcanic activity, tectonic subsidence, dam foundation settlement. None of the mechanisms that could create additional depth matched the evidence we found. The bottom line is that sections of Blue Mesa Reservoir are significantly deeper than they should be, and we have no explanation for how or when that occurred. The Bureau of Reclamation conducted structural assessments of Blue Mesa Dam to determine whether the depth anomalies affected dam safety. Engineers found no evidence of foundation problems, structural settling, or compromise to dam integrity. The anomalous depths appeared to exist independently of the dam structure. Investigation results were compiled into a comprehensive report submitted to the Department of the Interior in December 1977. The report documented the depth measurements, geological findings, and structural assessments, but offered no conclusions about the cause of the anomalies. Public release of the investigation findings was postponed, pending additional review by the Department of Interior's Geological Advisory Committee. The committee requested further study before authorizing publication of results that might affect public confidence in dam safety or recreational use of the reservoir. In March 1978, the investigation was quietly terminated. Personnel involved in the research received transfers to other projects, and the compiled data was classified as administratively sensitive, pending final review. The final review never occurred. Modern recreational users of Blue Mesa Reservoir remain unaware of the depth anomalies documented in 1976 and 1977. Current navigation charts show depths consistent with original engineering projections, and no official acknowledgement exists of sections that measure 400 feet deeper than the natural canyon floor. Occasional fishing reports mention unexpectedly deep water in certain areas of the reservoir, but these accounts are typically attributed to measurement errors or confusion about location markers. Charter boat operators sometimes note unusual sonar readings near the Old River Channel, but they have no access to historical data that might explain the discrepancies. The additional depth remains unmapped and unacknowledged. Somewhere beneath the recreational surface of Colorado's largest reservoir, 400 extra feet of water cover a bottom that exists deeper than geology should allow, holding space that was never surveyed, never planned, and never explained. A hidden volume that transforms Blue Mesa Reservoir from an engineered water storage facility into something larger than the sum of its documented parts. Sometimes, machines develop instincts that their operators never programmed. The Pikes Peak Cog Railway climbs 8.9 miles from Manitou Springs to the summit of Pikes Peak, rising from an elevation of 6,174 feet to 14,115 feet above sea level. Construction began in 1888 under the direction of Zalmon Simmons, who envisioned a tourist railway that would carry passengers to the summit of America's most famous mountain. The railway opened to the public on June 30th, 1891, making it the highest cog railway in the world and the second highest train route in the United States. The engineering challenges of building a railway up Pikes Peak required innovative solutions for the extreme grades and harsh weather conditions. The track follows a winding route that includes grades as steep as 25%, necessitating the use of a cog and rack system to prevent trains from sliding backward. Swiss-manufactured locomotives, equipped with special braking systems and gear mechanisms, pull passenger cars up the mountainside at carefully controlled speeds, averaging 6 miles per hour. Mile marker 8.7 sits at an elevation of 12,400 feet, approximately 1 mile below the summit, in an area known as the Alpine Zone. At this elevation, the landscape consists of rocky terrain with scattered alpine vegetation, exposed to extreme weather conditions year-round. The location offers commanding views of the surrounding Colorado Rockies, but represents one of the most challenging sections of the railway due to high winds and rapid weather changes. The railway operates multiple trains daily during tourist season, typically running 4 to 6 locomotives on staggered schedules to accommodate passenger demand. Each train follows identical routes and timetables, with engineers maintaining radio contact with the base station to coordinate movements and report any mechanical issues or weather-related delays. On September 14, 1963, engineer Robert Martinez experienced something that challenged 42 years of railway operations. Martinez was piloting the 10:30 morning departure with 26 passengers when his locomotive suddenly lost power at mile marker 8.7. The train rolled to a complete stop despite showing no mechanical problems or warning indicators. Martinez attempted to restart the engine multiple times, but the locomotive remained unresponsive to throttle command. Every gauge read normal. Martinez later reported to railway supervisor James Powell. Steam pressure, water levels, electrical systems, everything looked fine. The engine just wouldn't respond. It was like something else was controlling the locomotive. Martinez used his radio to contact the base station, reporting the mechanical failure and requesting assistance. Dispatcher Helen Chen informed him that she was receiving identical reports from 3 other trains currently operating on the mountain. All 4 locomotives had stopped simultaneously at mile marker 8.7. The coordination seemed impossible. The trains were operating on different schedules, separated by intervals of 30 to 45 minutes. Their simultaneous stop at the identical location suggested either massive mechanical failure affecting the entire railway system, or some external factor that influenced all locomotives equally. Base Station Supervisor Powell immediately ordered diagnostic checks on all railway equipment, including power systems, communication networks, and track infrastructure. Railway mechanics found no evidence of electrical failures, track problems, or equipment malfunctions that could cause multiple trains to stop simultaneously. After exactly 4 minutes, all 4 locomotives resumed normal operation without any intervention from engineers or maintenance personnel. The trains continued to the summit on schedule, completing their runs without further incident. Powell filed a comprehensive incident report with the Pikes Peak Cog Railway's corporate headquarters, documenting the synchronized stops and the complete absence of identifiable mechanical causes. The report noted that such coordination between independent mechanical systems should have been impossible given the railway's operational design. The incident might have been dismissed as an unusual coincidence if similar events had not continued throughout the following decades. Railway records from 1964 through 1985 document over 100 additional instances of synchronized stops at mile marker 8.7. The events occurred randomly throughout operating seasons, affecting anywhere from 2 to 6 trains simultaneously. Each incident followed the identical pattern: complete loss of locomotive response lasting exactly 4 minutes, followed by normal resumption of operations. Engineer Patricia Williams, who worked for the railway from 1972 to 1994, witnessed 37 synchronized stops during her career. She developed detailed logs of each incident, hoping to identify patterns that might explain the phenomenon. The stops happened in all kinds of weather, different seasons, various times of day, Williams documented in her personal notes. No correlation with passenger loads, locomotive types, or mechanical conditions. The only constant was the location, always mile marker 8.7, and the duration, always 4 minutes exactly. Williams noted that passengers typically assumed the stops were scheduled parts of the tour, allowing them to photograph the mountain scenery. Most visitors remained unaware that their train had experienced unexplained mechanical behavior, accepting the pause as a normal operational procedure. Railway mechanics conducted extensive investigations following each synchronized stop incident. They tested electrical systems, examined track conditions, and analyzed locomotive performance data. No mechanical explanations emerged for the coordinated behavior of independent train systems. Dr. Michael Chen, an electrical engineer from the Colorado School of Mines, joined the investigation in 1978 after railway management requested an independent assessment of the synchronized stops. Chen's team used sophisticated monitoring equipment to analyze electromagnetic fields, radio frequency interference, and electrical anomalies that might affect locomotive control systems. We monitored several synchronized stop events with precision instruments, Chen reported in his technical analysis. No electromagnetic anomalies, no radio interference, no external signals that could simultaneously affect multiple locomotives. The trains simply stopped responding to operator commands for exactly 4 minutes, then resumed normal function. Chen's investigation expanded to include geological surveys of the mile marker 8.7 area, searching for mineral deposits or underground formations that might generate electromagnetic fields capable of interfering with train operations. Geological assessments found typical granite and metamorphic rock formations with no unusual properties. The Colorado Public Utilities Commission launched a formal investigation in 1981, following passenger complaints about unexpected train delays. Safety inspectors conducted comprehensive reviews of railway maintenance records, operator training procedures, and mechanical systems to determine whether the synchronized stops posed risks to passenger safety. The Commission's investigation team, led by Transportation Safety Specialist Dorothy Martinez, found no evidence of safety violations or mechanical deficiencies. The synchronized stops, while unexplained, had never resulted in injuries or significant operational problems beyond minor schedule delays. The phenomenon appears benign from a safety perspective, Martinez concluded in her official report. The trains stop smoothly, remain stable during the 4-minute duration, and resume normal operation without incident. Passengers are never in danger, and the stops occur in a safe section of track with good visibility. The Public Utilities Commission recommended continued monitoring of the synchronized stops while noting that the railway's safety record remained excellent despite the unexplained mechanical behavior. The Commission's final report was filed as Resolved No Action Required, effectively closing the official investigation. Railway corporate headquarters implemented new documentation procedures in 1985, requiring engineers to complete detailed incident reports following any synchronized stops. The reports were compiled into a confidential database maintained by the company's insurance carrier to demonstrate ongoing safety monitoring efforts. Modern computerized locomotive control systems installed during railway upgrades in the 1990s have not eliminated the synchronized stops. Digital monitoring equipment records the events with greater precision, confirming that all affected trains experience identical loss of throttle response lasting exactly 4 minutes. Current railway personnel receive training on synchronized stop procedures as part of standard safety protocols. Engineers learn to announce the stops to passengers as scheduled scenic viewing breaks, maintaining the illusion of normal operations while documenting the incidents for corporate records. The railway's marketing materials make no mention of the synchronized stops, focusing instead on scenic views and historical significance. Passengers continue to enjoy their mountain railway experience, unaware that their trains occasionally pause not for scheduled reasons, but because something at mile marker 8.7 requires 4 minutes of absolute stillness from every locomotive climbing toward the summit. Contemporary incident logs show that synchronized stops continue to occur regularly, maintaining the same precise timing and location patterns documented for over 60 years. The railway operates successfully, despite, or perhaps because of, mechanical behavior that follows rules written by something other than its engineers, creating scheduled delays that honor no human timetable, but never fail to end exactly when they began. Light obeys physics until it encounters something that writes its own rules. Great Sand Dunes National Park preserves the tallest sand dunes in North America, rising over 750 feet above the floor of Colorado's San Luis Valley. The dunes cover approximately 30 square miles, formed over hundreds of thousands of years as prevailing winds carried sand particles from the valley floor against the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. The resulting formations create a landscape that shifts constantly, with dune faces advancing and retreating according to seasonal wind patterns and storm systems. The San Luis Valley sits at an elevation of 7,500 feet, surrounded by mountain ranges that create unique atmospheric conditions. The valley's high desert climate produces over 300 days of sunshine annually, with minimal cloud cover and exceptional visibility. These conditions have made the area popular with photographers, seeking to capture the interplay of light and shadow across the constantly changing dune surfaces. Indigenous peoples, including the Ute and Apache tribes, traveled through the valley for centuries before European exploration. Their oral histories describe the dunes using terms that translate roughly to the place where shadows move wrong, or sand that holds darkness. These descriptions were generally dismissed by early settlers as metaphorical references to the dunes' imposing appearance or the challenging navigation they presented to travelers. Scientific study of the dunes began in earnest during the 1930s, when the Civilian Conservation Corps conducted surveys for what would eventually become a national monument in 1932. Geologists documented the dunes' formation processes, wind patterns, and seasonal migration patterns. Their research established baseline measurements for ongoing monitoring of this unique geological formation. On June 8, 1979, professional photographer Daniel Martinez discovered something that challenged his understanding of how light behaves in natural environments. Martinez was documenting the dunes for a National Geographic assignment focused on North American desert landscapes. He had positioned himself on the western edge of the dune field at 5:45 in the morning, preparing to capture sunrise lighting across the sand formations. Using a telephoto lens to compress the perspective, Martinez began photographing the interplay of shadows and highlights as the sun climbed above the eastern mountains. At 6:12 a.m., Martinez noticed a shadow pattern that appeared inconsistent with the surrounding terrain. Through his viewfinder, he observed a perfectly geometric shadow, roughly triangular in shape, that appeared to be cast by a dune formation approximately 800 yards into the dune field. The shadow's edges were sharp and well-defined, suggesting a steep angular feature that would be clearly visible from his position. Martinez lowered his camera and scanned the dune field with binoculars, searching for the formation that was casting the distinctive shadow. He could see no dune, ridge, or depression that corresponded to the shadow pattern. The area appeared to consist of gentle, rolling sand formations typical of the region. "I assumed I was looking at the wrong location," Martinez later explained in his field notes. "Shadow patterns can be deceptive in desert terrain. But when I returned to my camera and looked through the telephoto lens again, the shadow was clearly visible in the exact spot where I saw nothing with binoculars." Martinez photographed the shadow pattern extensively, using different focal lengths and exposure settings to document the phenomena. The shadow remained consistent across multiple images, appearing as a sharp-edged, geometric shape that contrasted with the softer, curved shadows cast by the surrounding dunes. At 6:35 a.m., exactly 23 minutes after first noticing the shadow, Martinez watched it fade and disappear. The transition occurred gradually over approximately 30 seconds, as though the feature casting the shadow was slowly flattening or dissolving. Within a minute, no trace of the geometric shadow remained visible. Martinez spent the remainder of the morning exploring the dune field on foot, attempting to locate any physical feature that might have created the shadow pattern. He found no formations, depressions, or irregularities that could account for the geometric shape he had photographed. The sand in the area appeared undisturbed and consistent with the surrounding terrain. Martinez's photographs, when developed, clearly showed the geometric shadow pattern despite the absence of any visible feature that could have created it. The images became part of his National Geographic submission, though they were ultimately excluded from the published article due to editorial concerns about unexplained phenomena. Word of Martinez's photographs spread through the photography community during the early 1980s. Several professional photographers traveled to Great Sand Dunes specifically to document the shadow anomaly, hoping to capture similar images or provide alternative explanations for the phenomenon. Time-lapse photographer Sarah Chen visited the dunes in September 1981, equipped with automated cameras designed to record changes in lighting and shadow patterns over extended periods. Chen positioned multiple cameras at different locations around the dune field, programmed to take photographs at 15-second intervals from sunrise to sunset for 7 consecutive days. Chen's time-lapse sequences confirmed Martinez's observations. The geometric shadow appeared consistently each morning, lasting exactly 23 minutes, regardless of seasonal variations in sunrise timing or atmospheric conditions. The shadow maintained identical proportions and orientation across multiple days of observation. The precision was unsettling, Chen noted in her technical report. Natural shadow patterns vary based on sun angle, atmospheric conditions, and seasonal changes. This shadow appeared at different absolute times each day, but always lasted exactly 23 minutes from first appearance to complete disappearance. Chen's photographs also revealed that the shadow appeared to move independently of solar progression. While normal shadows shifted position as the sun rose higher, the geometric shadow remained stationary for its entire 23-minute duration, then vanished without transitioning to a new location. Dr. Robert Williams, an atmospheric physicist from the University of Colorado, joined the investigation in spring 1982 after reviewing Chen's photographic documentation. Williams hypothesized that unusual atmospheric conditions in the San Luis Valley might create optical effects that could explain the shadow phenomenon. Williams' team used specialized equipment to measure atmospheric density, humidity levels, and temperature gradients during morning hours when the shadow typically appeared. They found no atmospheric anomalies that could create the observed optical effects. Atmospheric phenomena that create shadow illusions typically involve temperature inversions or humidity layers, Williams explained in his preliminary report. We found normal atmospheric conditions during the times when the shadow appeared. The phenomenon doesn't match any known optical effects. The National Park Service commissioned its own investigation in 1983, concerned that unexplained phenomena might attract unwanted attention from paranormal enthusiasts or interfere with the park's scientific mission. Park geologist Patricia Chen conducted comprehensive surveys of the dune field, using ground-penetrating radar and topographical mapping equipment to identify any subsurface features that might influence surface shadows. Chen's surveys revealed typical sand dune formations with no unusual underground structures, buried objects, or geological anomalies. The sand composition appeared uniform throughout the area where the shadow phenomenon occurred. We found absolutely nothing that could cast the documented shadow pattern, Chen reported to Park Administration. No buried structures, no subsurface variations, no geological features that would create the observed effects. The shadow appears to exist independently of any physical feature. The investigation expanded to include magnetic field measurements and electromagnetic surveys based on theories that unknown mineral deposits might affect light transmission or create localized atmospheric disturbances. All measurements fell within normal ranges for the region. Park Service officials decided to classify the investigation results as inconclusive, pending additional study, rather than acknowledging unexplained phenomena in official documentation. The decision reflected concerns about potential impacts on the park's reputation for scientific research and educational programs. Photography permits for the dune field became more restrictive following the investigation, with professional photographers required to submit detailed shooting plans and agree to share any unusual findings with park management. These restrictions effectively limited documentation of the shadow phenomenon while maintaining the appearance of normal scientific caution. Modern digital photography has provided more sophisticated documentation of the shadow pattern, but has not resolved the mystery of its origin. High-resolution cameras confirm the shadow's geometric precision and consistent timing, while GPS equipment verifies that no corresponding physical features exist in the area. Current park literature makes no mention of the shadow phenomenon, focusing instead on the dune's geological significance and wildlife habitat. Visitors occasionally report unusual shadow patterns, but these accounts are typically attributed to photographic artifacts or misidentification of normal dune formations. The shadow continues to appear each morning with mechanical precision, lasting exactly 23 minutes before fading into the natural play of light across the sand. Professional photographers who know of the phenomenon occasionally position themselves to document it, creating an informal archive of images that record something casting a shadow despite having no substance to cast it. At the edge of each day's beginning, the great sand dunes hold space for darkness that belongs to no physical form, creating a shadow that exists without origin, marking time according to rules that acknowledge neither sun nor season but honor only the precise geometry of its own impossible presence. Numbers have meaning until they start counting something that should not exist. Loveland Pass crosses the Continental Divide at 11,990 feet above sea level, connecting Clear Creek and Summit counties via United States Highway 6. The pass represents one of the highest year-round vehicle crossings in Colorado, maintained as a backup route when the Eisenhower Tunnel closes due to accidents or extreme weather. Loveland Pass gained strategic importance during World War II as a testing ground for mountain warfare equipment, with military personnel conducting cold weather operations training in the harsh alpine environment. The terrain around Loveland Pass consists of exposed granite peaks, alpine tundra, and snowfields that persist year-round above tree line. Weather conditions change rapidly due to the elevation and exposure, with visibility dropping to near zero during frequent storms. The isolation and challenging environment have made the area largely unpopulated, except for highway maintenance crews and recreational skiers using nearby Loveland Ski Area. Amateur radio operators have used the pass as a preferred location for long-distance communication since the 1950s. The high elevation and minimal electronic interference make it ideal for radio propagation experiments and emergency communication drills. The Rocky Mountain Radio Club established monitoring station W0KRM at the pass in 1978, using it for avalanche reporting and coordination with search and rescue operations. Radio communication in the area follows standard Federal Communications Commission protocols, with designated frequencies for emergency services, amateur operators, and commercial users. The sparse population and remote location typically produce minimal radio traffic, making it easy to identify and investigate unusual transmissions. On December 7, 1982, amateur radio operator Thomas Morrison detected a transmission that violated every protocol he understood. Morrison was conducting routine propagation tests from his mobile station parked at the Loveland Pass summit when he intercepted a signal on frequency 14.205 MHz within the amateur radio 20-meter band, but not assigned to any known operator. The transmission consisted of a series of numbers spoken in clear, unaccented English: 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, 29. The sequence continued for exactly 2 minutes, repeating the same 7 numbers in identical order and timing. After a brief pause, the transmission repeated once more, then ceased. Morrison attempted to establish contact with the broadcasting station, but received no response to his calls. The voice was completely neutral, Morrison later documented in his radio log. No regional accent, no emotional inflection, perfect enunciation. It sounded artificial, but this was 1982. We didn't have voice synthesis technology that could produce such natural speech patterns. Morrison recognized the number sequence as prime numbers arranged in ascending order, starting with 7 and continuing through 29. The mathematical pattern suggested deliberate construction rather than random transmission, but he could find no purpose for broadcasting prime numbers on amateur radio frequencies. Morrison used directional antenna equipment to determine the signal's origin point. His triangulation readings indicated the transmission originated from coordinates 39 degrees, 38 minutes, 52 seconds north latitude, and 105 degrees, 52 minutes, 14 seconds west longitude, a location approximately 300 yards southwest of the Loveland Pass summit. Morrison hiked to the coordinates the following morning, searching for radio equipment or evidence of recent activity. He found only exposed rock and alpine vegetation, with no signs of transmitting equipment, power sources, or human presence. The location sat on a steep slope with no vehicle access and no shelter that could conceal radio gear. The transmission returned 7 days later at exactly the same time and frequency. Morrison monitored the broadcast with recording equipment documenting identical content, timing, and signal characteristics. The voice repeated the same sequence of prime numbers 7 through 29 with mechanical precision. Morrison shared recordings with other amateur radio operators throughout Colorado, hoping someone could identify the transmission source or explain its purpose. The recordings were distributed through the Rocky Mountain Radio Club's monthly newsletter, generating interest among technical specialists and electronics engineers. Radio engineer Patricia Chen analyzed Morrison's recordings using spectrum analysis equipment borrowed from the National Bureau of Standards Laboratory in Boulder. Chen's technical assessment revealed transmission characteristics that suggested professional-grade equipment operating at significant power levels. The signal showed exceptionally clean frequency response and minimal distortion, Chen reported in her technical analysis. This wasn't amateur equipment or improvised transmitter setup. Someone was using commercial or military-grade radio gear capable of precise frequency control and high power output. Chen calculated that producing the documented signal strength would require a transmitter system with at least 500 watts of output power, along with sophisticated antenna arrays and frequency stabilization equipment. Such a system would be expensive, complex, and virtually impossible to conceal in the alpine environment around Loveland Pass. The Colorado section of the American Radio Relay League requested Federal Communications Commission investigation in March 1983, citing unauthorized operation on amateur radio frequencies. FCC field engineers conducted comprehensive surveys using mobile direction-finding equipment to locate the transmitting station. FCC investigator Robert Martinez confirmed Morrison's triangulation results, establishing that signals originated from the same coordinates near Loveland Pass summit. Martinez's team used sensitive detection equipment to search for radio frequency emissions, power sources, and electronic devices within a half-mile radius of the coordinate location. "We found absolutely nothing," Martinez documented in his enforcement report. "No transmitting equipment, no power cables, no antenna systems." The signal appeared to originate from bare ground at 11,800 feet elevation, with no infrastructure to support radio operations. The investigation expanded to include aerial surveys and ground-penetrating radar searches for buried equipment or underground installations. All searches produced negative results. The FCC concluded that the transmissions were likely originating from mobile equipment that was removed between broadcasts, though no vehicle tracks or equipment transport evidence was found in the difficult terrain. Weekly transmissions continued throughout 1983 and 1984, always occurring at the same time and frequency with identical content. The mathematical precision of the prime number sequence and the mechanical consistency of the broadcasts attracted attention from cryptography experts and military communications specialists. Dr. William Chen, a mathematician from the Colorado School of Mines, analyzed the number sequences for potential coded messages or mathematical significance beyond the obvious prime number pattern. His research revealed no hidden meanings or cryptographic applications for the specific sequence being broadcast. Prime numbers have significance in various mathematical applications, particularly cryptography and number theory, Chen explained in his academic report. But broadcasting the sequence 7 through 29 serves no apparent mathematical or practical purpose. It's like transmitting the alphabet recognizable pattern, but no useful information content. The National Security Agency requested copies of all recordings and technical data related to the Loveland Pass transmissions in January 1985. The request was made through official channels with appropriate security clearances, but no explanation was provided for the agency's interest in amateur radio anomalies. FCC personnel involved in the investigation received instructions to forward all future reports to a classified address rather than standard enforcement channels. The change in procedure occurred without explanation, and field engineers were instructed not to discuss the case with unauthorized personnel. Transmission monitoring continued through volunteer radio operators who maintained informal logs of signal activity. The broadcasts persisted with mechanical regularity every 7 days. Same time, same frequency, same content. The consistency suggested automated equipment rather than manual operation, but no automatic transmitting devices were ever located. Dr. Patricia Williams, the geologist who had investigated multiple Colorado anomalies, joined the research effort in 1986 after learning about the mathematical nature of the transmissions. Williams conducted geological surveys of the transmission origin point, searching for mineral deposits or underground formations that might affect radio propagation. Williams found typical granite formations with no unusual properties that could explain enhanced radio transmission capabilities. Electromagnetic field measurements detected no anomalies that might indicate natural radio frequency generation or amplification effects. The geology is completely ordinary, Williams noted in her field report. No metallic ore deposits, no unusual crystal formations, no electromagnetic anomalies. There's nothing at that location that could generate, amplify, or transmit radio signals through natural processes. The transmissions ceased abruptly on December 7, 1989, exactly 7 years after they began. Radio operators monitoring the expected broadcast time found only silence on the designated frequency. Extensive searches using direction-finding equipment detected no signals originating from the Loveland Pass area. The Federal Communications Commission closed its investigation file in March 1990, classifying the matter as resolved through cessation of unauthorized activity. No enforcement actions were taken, and no equipment confiscations were recorded. The file was transferred to classified storage with restricted access designations. Amateur radio operators continued to monitor frequencies around Loveland Pass, hoping to detect resumption of the mathematical transmissions. Occasional false alarms occur when distant stations propagate unexpectedly, but no signals matching the original characteristics have been detected. Modern digital signal processing equipment has been positioned at the pass by radio enthusiasts, recording all activity on frequencies where the transmissions occurred. These automated monitoring systems maintain continuous watch for signals that might indicate return of the numbered sequences. The coordinates where signals originated remain unmarked and unremarkable exposed granite at treeline with no evidence that anything unusual ever occurred there. Hikers occasionally visit the location, guided by GPS coordinates preserved in amateur radio archives, finding only alpine terrain that offers no clues about 7 years of impossible broadcasts. Somewhere in classified files, recordings preserve the mechanical voice that counted prime numbers into the thin air above Loveland Pass, marking time with mathematical precision toward a conclusion that revealed nothing except the certainty that something had been keeping count, maintaining a schedule that honored no human purpose, but never missed its appointed weekly transmission until the day it stopped as precisely as it had begun. Atmospheric pressure follows predictable patterns until something starts breathing with the mountain itself. Independence Pass crosses the Continental Divide at 12,095 feet above sea level, connecting the Roaring Fork Valley near Aspen with the Arkansas River Valley near Leadville. The pass represents one of the highest paved roads in North America, typically closing from November through May due to extreme weather conditions and avalanche danger. During its brief summer operating season, the narrow, winding highway carries tourists and locals across some of the most challenging terrain in the Colorado Rockies. The pass earned its name from the nearby ghost town of Independence, established in 1879 during Colorado's silver mining boom. The town briefly flourished at 11,600 feet elevation before harsh winters, and declining ore prices forced its abandonment in 1888. Today, the town site serves as a historical marker along the pass route, its remaining structures testament to the challenges of high-altitude settlement. Weather monitoring at Independence Pass began in 1967 when the National Weather Service installed an automated station to provide critical data for avalanche forecasting and highway safety decisions. The station measures temperature, wind speed, precipitation, and barometric pressure at 15-minute intervals throughout the year. Located at such extreme elevation, the equipment must withstand temperature variations from -40 to +70 degrees Fahrenheit, along with winds exceeding 100 miles per hour during winter storms. Barometric pressure measurements at high altitude follow well-understood patterns related to weather systems, seasonal changes, and diurnal temperature variations. At 12,000 feet elevation, normal pressure readings range between 17 and 18 inches of mercury, significantly lower than sea level measurements, but following predictable fluctuations based on atmospheric conditions. On July 23, 1971, weather technician David Martinez noticed an anomaly in the Independence Pass pressure readings that defied meteorological explanation. Martinez was conducting routine maintenance on the weather station equipment when he discovered that pressure readings from the previous day showed an unusual spike. At 14:37 hours, the barometric pressure had increased from 17.4 inches of mercury to 17.7 inches, a sudden rise of 0.3 inches that occurred over approximately 2 minutes. The pressure increase lasted exactly 41 minutes before gradually returning to normal levels. Martinez checked equipment calibration and reviewed data from surrounding weather stations to determine whether the spike represented equipment malfunction or genuine atmospheric phenomena. Weather stations at Aspen, 15 miles northeast of the pass, and Leadville, 20 miles southeast, showed normal pressure readings during the time period when Independence Pass recorded the anomaly. The pressure spike appeared to be localized to the immediate area around the pass summit, affecting no other monitoring locations in the region. "I assumed instrument failure," Martinez documented in his maintenance log. "A 0.3-inch pressure increase in 2 minutes isn't possible under normal atmospheric conditions. But when I tested the equipment, everything calibrated perfectly." Martinez reported the anomaly to his supervisor at the National Weather Service Regional Office in Grand Junction. Chief Meteorologist Helen Chen instructed him to monitor the equipment for additional irregularities and document any further pressure spikes that might indicate systematic equipment problems. Martinez maintained careful watch over the Independence Pass station throughout August 1971. On August 11th, exactly 19 days after the first anomaly, the pressure spike occurred again. Same magnitude, same duration, same rapid onset and gradual recovery. The pattern suggested either recurring equipment malfunction or a genuine atmospheric phenomenon occurring on a precise schedule. Chen traveled to Independence Pass in September to inspect the weather station personally and witness any pressure anomalies firsthand. Her visit coincided with the predicted date for the third pressure spike, based on the 19-day interval observed in July and August. On September 30th, at 14:37 hours, Chen watched the barometric pressure readings increase from 17.2 to 17.5 inches of mercury over approximately 90 seconds. The pressure held at the elevated level for exactly 41 minutes before gradually declining to normal readings. "I witnessed something that shouldn't happen in nature," Chen later reported to National Weather Service headquarters. Barometric pressure doesn't spike locally without corresponding changes in surrounding areas. Weather systems operate on scales much larger than a single mountain pass. Chen expanded her investigation to include seismic monitoring equipment, suspecting that underground geological activity might create pressure changes through mechanisms not fully understood by meteorological science. The Colorado Geological Survey provided portable seismometers to detect any Earth movement that might correlate with the pressure anomalies. Seismic readings during subsequent pressure spikes showed no unusual activity. The pressure increases occurred without corresponding earthquakes, underground movement, or geological disturbances. The phenomenon appeared to be purely atmospheric, despite its impossible localized nature. Dr. Robert Williams, an atmospheric physicist from the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, joined the investigation in spring 1972. Williams brought sophisticated equipment designed to measure atmospheric density, temperature gradients, and humidity variations that might explain the pressure anomalies. Williams' measurements revealed that the pressure spikes occurred without corresponding changes in air temperature, humidity, or atmospheric density. The increased pressure readings appeared to represent genuine atmospheric compression, but the mechanism creating this compression remained unidentifiable. Increased barometric pressure typically results from descending air masses, temperature changes, or weather front movements. Williams explained in his technical report, "We found no evidence of any mechanisms that could create the observed pressure increases at Independence Pass." The investigation expanded to include atmospheric modeling using computer simulations of weather patterns around Independence Pass. The models predicted normal pressure variations based on topography, elevation, and seasonal weather patterns. None of the simulations could reproduce the 19-day pressure spike cycle. Williams commissioned detailed topographical surveys of the Independence Pass area, searching for unusual geographic features that might create localized atmospheric effects. The surveys revealed typical alpine terrain with no formations that could explain the pressure anomalies. Mountain meteorology experts from the University of Colorado reviewed the Independence Pass data, comparing it to pressure measurements from other high-altitude locations worldwide. No similar phenomena had been documented at any other weather stations, despite thousands of monitoring locations operating in comparable terrain and elevation. The National Weather Service classified the investigation results in January 1973, determining that publication of unexplained atmospheric phenomena might undermine public confidence in meteorological science. The pressure anomalies continued to occur on schedule, but official documentation was restricted to internal reports. Dr. Patricia Chen, no relation to meteorologist Helen Chen, assumed responsibility for ongoing monitoring of the Independence Pass pressure spikes when she joined the National Weather Service in 1974. Her role involved maintaining the automated data collection while ensuring that the anomalies received no public attention. The pressure spikes became an accepted part of the Independence Pass weather pattern, Chen noted in her confidential logs. Every 19 days, like clockwork, the barometric pressure would increase by exactly 0.3 inches of mercury for exactly 41 minutes. We stopped looking for explanations and started simply documenting the events. Chen's records show that the pressure anomalies continued consistently through the 1970s and 80s, occurring regardless of season, weather conditions, or atmospheric patterns. The 19-day cycle remained precise to within hours, and the magnitude never varied by more than 0.01 inches of mercury. Modern digital weather monitoring equipment, installed at Independence Pass during the 1990s, has confirmed the persistence of the pressure anomalies. Computer-controlled sensors provide more precise measurements, documenting the phenomenon with greater accuracy while offering no additional insights into its cause. Current National Weather Service protocols include special handling procedures for Independence Pass pressure data. Automated systems flag the recurring pressure spikes to prevent them from being incorporated into weather forecasting models or climate databases where they might affect prediction accuracy. The pressure anomalies have been quietly removed from public weather data through filtering algorithms that treat the spikes as instrument errors. Weather reports for the Independence Pass area show smoothed pressure readings that eliminate the 19-day anomalies from public view. Contemporary meteorologists assigned to the Independence Pass station receive briefings about the pressure spikes as part of their orientation, learning to treat the phenomenon as a known but unexplained characteristic of the monitoring location. The briefings emphasize observation and documentation rather than investigation or explanation. The pressure continues to rise every 19 days with mechanical precision, creating moments when the atmosphere around Independence Pass becomes denser than physics suggests it should. During those 41 minutes, something presses down on the highest reaches of the Continental Divide with invisible weight, marking time according to a schedule that acknowledges no weather pattern, following rules written in an atmospheric language that measures pressure without revealing what creates the force that makes the mountain hold its breath. Navigation instruments follow magnetic north until they encounter something that rewrites the fundamental rules of direction. Cameron Pass crosses the Continental Divide at 10,276 feet above sea level, connecting the Poudre River drainage with North Park via State Highway 14. The pass serves as a critical transportation link between Fort Collins and the ranching communities of Jackson County, remaining open year-round despite heavy snowfall and challenging winter conditions. The route follows a path used by fur trappers in the 1820s and later by cattle drives moving livestock between summer and winter pastures. The area around Cameron Pass consists of typical Front Range geology granite outcroppings, metamorphic formations, and sedimentary layers deposited over millions of years. The terrain shows no unusual geological features that would distinguish it from hundreds of similar mountain passes throughout Colorado. Elevation and exposure create harsh weather conditions, but the landscape appears entirely normal to casual observation. Professional surveying in the Cameron Pass area began in the 1930s during highway construction projects. State engineers used standard surveying techniques, including magnetic compass readings, for establishing baseline measurements and verifying geographic coordinates. The Cameron Pass route was selected partly because initial surveys showed no unusual topographical challenges or navigation difficulties. Magnetic declination, the difference between magnetic north and true geographic north, varies predictably across different geographic locations. In northern Colorado, magnetic compasses typically point approximately 9 degrees east of true north, a well-documented variation that surveyors routinely account for in their calculations. On September 6, 1958, Colorado Department of Transportation surveyor James Powell discovered that standard magnetic declination calculations failed at Cameron Pass. Powell was conducting routine boundary surveys for highway maintenance right-of-way when he noticed that his compass readings consistently indicated magnetic north was 26 degrees east of true north 17 degrees. Beyond the expected declination for that geographic location, Powell assumed equipment malfunction and replaced his compass with a backup instrument, but the readings remained identical. Powell used GPS coordinates to establish true geographic directions, then compared those measurements with multiple magnetic compasses. All compasses showed the same 17-degree deflection beyond normal magnetic declination. The anomaly appeared to affect magnetic instruments consistently within a specific area around the pass summit. I tested 6 different compasses, Powell documented in his survey notes. Brand new instruments, properly calibrated, different manufacturers. They all pointed 17 degrees further east than they should have. Something was pulling the needles off their normal heading. Powell marked the boundaries of the magnetic anomaly using systematic compass readings at measured intervals. The deflection affected compasses within approximately 200 yards of the pass summit, creating a roughly circular area where magnetic instruments provided inaccurate readings. Outside this zone, compasses function normally. The discovery had immediate practical implications for highway maintenance and emergency services. Search and rescue teams relied on compass navigation for operations in the Cameron Pass area, and the magnetic anomaly could lead rescuers significantly off course during emergency situations. Powell reported the compass deflection to his supervisor at the Colorado Department of Transportation, who contacted the United States Geological Survey for assistance with investigating the magnetic anomaly. The USGS assigned geophysicist Dr. Margaret Chen to conduct comprehensive magnetic field surveys around Cameron Pass. Chen's investigation began in October 1958, using magnetometer equipment designed to detect variations in the Earth's magnetic field. Her measurements confirmed Powell's observations. Compasses deflected consistently 17 degrees beyond normal magnetic declination within the specified area around the pass. The magnetic field readings showed a clear anomaly, Chen documented in her preliminary report. But the field strength wasn't significantly different from surrounding areas. Something was causing directional deflection without creating a stronger magnetic field. Chen expanded her survey to include geological mapping of the Cameron Pass area, searching for iron ore deposits, unusual rock formations, or mineral concentrations that might affect magnetic compass readings. Core samples and rock analysis revealed typical granite and metamorphic compositions with no unusual magnetic properties. The investigation attracted attention from the National Bureau of Standards, which sent magnetic field specialists to Cameron Pass in spring 1959. Their sophisticated equipment confirmed the compass deflection, but found no corresponding magnetic field anomalies that could explain the phenomenon. Dr. Robert Martinez, leading the Bureau of Standards investigation, attempted to correlate the magnetic anomaly with solar activity, atmospheric conditions, and seasonal variations. His data showed that the 17-degree deflection remained constant, regardless of external factors that typically influence magnetic field measurements. Magnetic anomalies usually vary with solar storms, seasonal changes, and atmospheric conditions, Martinez explained in his technical report. The Cameron Pass deflection stayed absolutely constant. It's like something was generating a permanent, stable magnetic field that affects compass needles but doesn't register on our magnetic field detection equipment. The Colorado Geological Survey commissioned additional studies in 1960, hoping to identify subsurface geological features that might create the observed magnetic effects. Deep drilling revealed standard rock formations extending to depths of over 200 feet, with no unusual mineral deposits or structural anomalies. Underground magnetic field mapping using sensitive detection equipment failed to locate any source for the compass deflection. The magnetic anomaly appeared to affect compass needles without creating detectable changes in the Earth's magnetic field strength or direction. Military personnel from nearby Fort Carson became involved in the investigation after learning that the magnetic anomaly could affect military navigation equipment. Army engineers conducted classified tests using military-grade compass systems and magnetic detection equipment throughout 1961. The military investigation results were classified, but unclassified portions of their reports confirmed the civilian findings. Military compass systems experienced identical 17-degree deflections within the Cameron Pass anomaly zone, regardless of equipment type or technological sophistication. Dr. Patricia Williams, the geologist who had investigated multiple Colorado anomalies, joined the Cameron Pass research effort in 1962. Williams focused on identifying any correlations between the magnetic anomaly and other unexplained phenomena documented throughout Colorado's mountain regions. Williams found no connections between the Cameron Pass compass deflection and other anomalies she had investigated. The magnetic phenomenon appeared to be unique, with no relationship to temperature variations, acoustic anomalies, or electromagnetic disturbances documented elsewhere in the state. Each anomaly seems to operate independently, Williams noted in her comparative analysis. There's no underlying pattern or common mechanism that connects the various unexplained phenomena we've documented throughout Colorado. They appear to be isolated incidents with no relationship to each other. The United States Geological Survey published a technical paper on the Cameron Pass magnetic anomaly in 1963, documenting the compass deflection while acknowledging that no explanation could be provided for its cause. The paper recommended that surveyors and navigation specialists account for the 17-degree deflection when working in the Cameron Pass area. Navigation charts and topographical maps were updated to include warnings about magnetic compass unreliability at Cameron Pass. The annotations advised users to rely on GPS coordinates or celestial navigation rather than magnetic compasses when operating within the anomaly zone. Modern GPS technology has reduced reliance on magnetic compasses for most navigation applications, but the Cameron Pass deflection continues to affect magnetic instruments with the same precision documented in 1958. Digital compass systems in smartphones and vehicles experience identical 17-degree errors when used within the anomaly zone. Contemporary geological surveys using advanced magnetic detection equipment have failed to identify any source for the compass deflection. The phenomenon persists despite technological advances that should have revealed its mechanism or eliminated the anomaly entirely. Highway signs now warn drivers that electronic compass systems may provide inaccurate readings in the Cameron Pass area. The warnings are posted without explanation, treating the magnetic anomaly as an accepted characteristic of the location rather than an unexplained phenomenon. Search and rescue personnel receive specific training on Cameron Pass navigation challenges, learning to compensate for compass deflection during emergency operations. The magnetic anomaly has become an operational reality that rescue teams accommodate rather than investigate. The deflection continues with mechanical precision, pulling compass needles 17 degrees beyond their proper heading within a circle that encompasses the summit of Cameron Pass. Something invisible and undetectable affects every magnetic instrument that enters the zone, creating a permanent revision to the fundamental rules of navigation that acknowledges no human understanding of magnetic fields, but never fails to redirect every compass needle according to its own unwavering interpretation of which direction should be called north. Some reflections have no source, and others illuminate nothing but themselves. Hanging Lake sits at 7,323 feet above sea level in Glenwood Canyon, accessible only by a steep 1.2-mile trail that climbs over 1,000 feet through White River National Forest. The lake formed approximately 12,000 years ago when a geological fault created a natural dam, allowing mineral-rich water to pool in a limestone depression. Travertine deposits built up over millennia, creating the distinctive terraced formations and turquoise water that make Hanging Lake one of Colorado's most photographed natural landmarks. The lake's unique chemistry results from underground springs that carry dissolved limestone through the surrounding rock formations. As the water reaches the surface and releases carbon dioxide, calcium carbonate precipitates out, forming the delicate travertine dams that contain the lake. The process continues today, with new mineral deposits slowly expanding the terraced edges that give Hanging Lake its otherworldly appearance. Access to Hanging Lake was restricted in 1978 when the United States Forest Service established it as a national natural landmark, recognizing both its geological significance and its fragile ecosystem. The designation limited visitor numbers and prohibited activities that might disturb the mineral formation process or water quality. Rangers began conducting regular patrols to monitor environmental conditions and ensure compliance with protection regulations. Night photography at Hanging Lake became popular in the 1980s as outdoor enthusiasts discovered that the lake's mineral content created exceptional reflections of star formations and moonlight. The high elevation and limited light pollution made the location ideal for astrophotography, though overnight camping was prohibited to protect the sensitive environment. On August 14, 1986, Forest Ranger Michael Rodriguez observed something that challenged his understanding of natural light phenomena. Rodriguez was conducting a routine evening patrol when he noticed intermittent flashes of light reflecting from Hanging Lake's surface. The flashes occurred in regular sequence, 6 brief illuminations, spaced approximately 30 seconds apart, followed by a longer interval before the pattern repeated. Rodriguez initially assumed the lights resulted from aircraft passing overhead or distant lightning, but the sky remained clear, with no visible aircraft or storm activity. Rodriguez positioned himself at the lake's edge to observe the light pattern more closely. The flashes appeared to originate from within the water itself, rather than reflecting external light sources. Each flash lasted approximately 2 seconds and produced a soft, white illumination that remained confined to the lake's surface without casting light on the surrounding canyon walls or vegetation. The lights seemed to come from underneath the water, Rodriguez documented in his patrol log, but they didn't illuminate anything except the lake's surface. No reflection on the rocks, no shadows cast by the trees, just these brief flashes that appeared and disappeared without affecting anything else. Rodriguez timed the light sequence using his watch, documenting that the 6-flash pattern repeated every 44 minutes throughout the night. He remained at the lake until sunrise, confirming that the phenomenon continued consistently from sunset to dawn, with mechanical precision. The ranger reported his observations to White River National Forest headquarters the following morning. Supervisor Janet Chen initially assumed Rodriguez had witnessed bioluminescence from algae or other microorganisms, though such phenomena were extremely rare in high-altitude freshwater environments. Chen visited Hanging Lake personally on August 28 to observe the light pattern during her own overnight vigil. She confirmed Rodriguez's observations, documenting the same 6-flash sequence recurring every 44 minutes throughout the night. Chen also noted that the lights appeared unaffected by weather conditions, maintaining their schedule despite temperature changes and wind that created surface ripples on the lake. The consistency was remarkable, Chen noted in her supervisor report. Natural phenomena usually vary based on environmental conditions. These lights followed a precise schedule that seemed completely independent of temperature, humidity, wind, or atmospheric pressure. Chen contacted the Colorado Geological Survey to request investigation of possible chemical or geological explanations for the light phenomenon. Dr. Patricia Williams, the geologist who had investigated multiple Colorado anomalies, led the scientific assessment of Hanging Lake's unusual light pattern. Williams' team conducted comprehensive water chemistry analysis, searching for minerals, gases, or biological agents that might produce bioluminescence or chemiluminescence. Laboratory tests revealed typical limestone spring chemistry, with no unusual components that could explain light generation. We tested for everything that might create natural light phenomena, Williams reported in her preliminary findings. Phosphorescent minerals, dissolved gases, microorganisms, chemical reactions. The water showed normal composition for a travertine spring system with nothing that could produce the observed light effects. The investigation expanded to include underwater photography using waterproof cameras with time-lapse capability. The cameras were positioned to record the lake bottom during light events, hoping to identify the source of illumination within the water column. Time-lapse photography revealed that the light flashes appeared to originate from approximately 15 feet below the surface, near the center of the lake's deepest section. However, underwater illumination showed no corresponding features, objects, or disturbances that could generate light at that depth. Dr. Robert Chen, a limnologist from Colorado State University, joined the investigation to study potential biological sources for the light phenomenon. Chen's research focused on identifying bacterial colonies, algae populations, or other organisms that might produce bioluminescence under specific environmental conditions. Chen's biological surveys found typical high-altitude aquatic life, with no species known to produce light. Microscopic analysis of water samples revealed no unusual bacterial populations or microorganisms that could explain the flash patterns. Mountain lakes at this elevation typically support very limited biological activity. Chen explained in his research summary, "We found normal populations of cold water bacteria and algae, but nothing remotely capable of producing the observed light phenomena." The United States Geological Survey, commissioned geological assessment of the lake bottom and surrounding rock formations, suspecting that underground mineral deposits or geological activity might create piezoelectric effects capable of generating light. Core samples from the lakebed revealed standard sediment layers with no unusual mineral compositions. Seismic monitoring equipment detected no underground activity that might correlate with the light flashes. The phenomenon appeared to occur independently of geological processes, atmospheric conditions, or seasonal variations. The Forest Service classified the investigation results as inconclusive pending additional study in March 1987. Official documentation acknowledged the light phenomenon while noting that no scientific explanation could be provided for its cause or mechanism. Access restrictions to Hanging Lake were quietly expanded following the investigation, with overnight photography permits requiring special approval and detailed equipment declarations. The restrictions effectively limited documentation of the light phenomenon while maintaining the appearance of standard environmental protection measures. Contemporary digital photography has provided more sophisticated documentation of the light sequence, confirming the 44-minute cycle and 6-flash pattern with greater precision. High-sensitivity cameras capture the flashes with remarkable detail, showing light that appears to emanate from within the water without corresponding underwater sources. Modern underwater exploration, using remote cameras and diving equipment, has failed to identify any mechanism for the light generation. The flashes continue to originate from the same approximate depth and location, but physical investigation reveals no features that could produce illumination. Current Forest Service protocols include special procedures for reporting unusual phenomena at Hanging Lake, with rangers instructed to document but not investigate light anomalies. The guidelines treat the phenomenon as an accepted characteristic of the location rather than an unexplained mystery requiring scientific attention. Visitor education materials make no mention of the light phenomenon, focusing instead on geological formation processes and environmental protection requirements. Most visitors remain unaware that Hanging Lake produces its own illumination according to a schedule that acknowledges no natural law governing light sources. The flashes continue their nightly sequence with mechanical precision, 6 brief illuminations every 44 minutes from sunset to sunrise. Something beneath the mineral-rich water of Hanging Lake maintains a schedule written in light, creating reflections that illuminate nothing except their own impossible existence, marking time according to rules that honor neither chemistry nor physics, but never deviate from their appointed pattern of appearing exactly when darkness provides the perfect canvas for light that should not be. Static follows laws of physics until it begins speaking in tongues no receiver was designed to understand. Wolf Creek Pass crosses the Continental Divide at 10,857 feet above sea level along United States Highway 160 between South Fork and Pagosa Springs. The pass represents one of Colorado's most challenging mountain crossings, with grades exceeding 7% and weather conditions that can change from clear skies to blizzard conditions within minutes. The route follows a path used by Ute hunting parties for centuries before becoming a wagon road in the 1870s and eventually a paved highway in 1952. The terrain around Wolf Creek Pass consists of volcanic rock formations and sedimentary layers deposited during the region's geological evolution. The San Juan Mountains, which include Wolf Creek Pass, formed through volcanic activity beginning approximately 35 million years ago. The area shows typical high-altitude characteristics, sparse vegetation above treeline, exposed rock faces, and minimal electromagnetic interference sources that would affect electronic equipment under normal circumstances. Highway maintenance at Wolf Creek Pass requires constant attention due to extreme weather conditions and heavy truck traffic. The Colorado Department of Transportation monitors road conditions using electronic sensors radio communication systems, and GPS tracking equipment. These systems operate reliably throughout the San Juan Mountains, providing critical data for winter road closures and avalanche warnings. Electronic interference in mountain environments typically results from atmospheric conditions, solar activity, or proximity to radio transmission facilities. Wolf Creek Pass sits far from major population centers and radio transmitters, making it an unlikely location for electromagnetic anomalies that would affect multiple types of electronic devices simultaneously. On June 12, 1974, Colorado State Patrol Trooper Daniel Martinez experienced something that challenged his understanding of how electronic equipment behaves in natural environments. Martinez was conducting routine patrol along Highway 160 when his police radio began producing unusual interference as he approached Wolf Creek Pass from the east. The interference consisted of a steady, rhythmic pattern, 3 short pulses followed by 2 longer tones, repeating continuously for the duration of his crossing over the pass summit. The interference affected not only his radio, but also his emergency beacon and the electronic ignition system of his patrol vehicle. All systems experienced identical rhythm patterns despite operating on different frequencies and using different electronic components. Martinez documented the interference in his patrol log and reported the incident to dispatch. Every electronic device in the car was picking up the same signal, Martinez later testified to state investigators. Police, radio, emergency equipment, even the engine timing system, they all synchronized to the same rhythm, 3 short, 2 long, over and over. I'd never seen anything like it. Martinez measured the geographic extent of the interference using his odometer, finding that the signal affected his equipment for exactly 2.7 miles of highway centered on the pass summit. The interference began abruptly as he reached mile marker 43 and ceased just as suddenly at mile marker 45.7. The State Patrol requested investigation by the Colorado Department of Transportation's Radio Communication Division, suspecting interference from unknown transmitters or equipment malfunction. Radio engineer Patricia Chen conducted comprehensive surveys of the Wolf Creek Pass area using spectrum analysis equipment designed to identify sources of electromagnetic interference. Chen's investigation confirmed Martinez's observations. Electronic devices experienced identical interference patterns when crossing the 2.7-mile section of highway. The interference affected AM radio, GPS navigation systems, cell phones, and electronic engine components regardless of manufacturer, frequency, or shielding specifications. The interference showed characteristics I'd never encountered, Chen documented in her technical report. Same rhythm pattern across all frequencies, affecting devices that should have been completely isolated from each other. AM radio operates in the kilohertz range. GPS uses gigahertz frequencies, yet they all picked up identical signals. Chen attempted to locate the source of interference using directional antenna equipment and mobile signal detection systems. Her triangulation efforts indicated that the signal originated from multiple points simultaneously, rather than a single transmission source. The interference appeared to emanate from the highway itself, rather than from any identifiable transmitter location. Electromagnetic field measurements revealed no unusual readings that could explain the widespread electronic interference. Field strength remained within normal ranges for the area, showing no evidence of powerful transmitters or natural electromagnetic anomalies. The Federal Communications Commission joined the investigation in autumn 1974 after receiving complaints from truckers and travelers about radio interference at Wolf Creek Pass. FCC field engineers conducted detailed surveys using sophisticated detection equipment borrowed from military installations. FCC investigator Robert Williams confirmed that the interference affected electronic devices in identical patterns across the specified highway section. His team documented that the 3 short, 2 long rhythm occurred at precise intervals regardless of atmospheric conditions, time of day, or seasonal variations. We recorded the interference pattern using multiple types of equipment, Williams reported to FCC headquarters. Every device picked up the same rhythm, but our spectrum analyzers couldn't identify what frequency was carrying the signal. It was like the devices were responding to something that wasn't broadcasting on any detectable frequency. Williams' investigation expanded to include searches for buried cables, hidden transmitters, or military installations that might generate electromagnetic fields capable of affecting civilian electronics. All searches produced negative results. The Wolf Creek Pass area contained no infrastructure that could create the documented interference patterns. The Colorado Geological Survey commissioned studies to determine whether geological formations might create natural electromagnetic effects capable of interfering with electronic equipment. Dr. Margaret Chen led geological assessments of the pass area, searching for mineral deposits or rock formations with unusual electrical properties. Geological surveys revealed typical volcanic rock compositions with no unusual mineral concentrations that could generate electromagnetic fields. Core samples and magnetic field measurements showed normal readings for the region, with no anomalies that might affect electronic equipment. The geology is completely ordinary for the San Juan Mountains, Chen reported in her geological assessment. No metallic ore deposits, no unusual crystal formations, no natural phenomena that could generate the documented interference patterns. Military personnel from nearby Air Force installations became involved in the investigation after learning that the interference could affect aircraft navigation equipment. Classified tests were conducted using military-grade electronic systems to determine whether the anomaly posed threats to aviation safety. The military investigation results remain classified, but unclassified portions of their reports confirmed that military electronics experienced identical interference patterns when passing through the Wolf Creek Pass area. The findings led to the establishment of special navigation procedures for aircraft operating near the pass. The National Institute of Standards and Technology provided technical consultation for the Wolf Creek Pass investigation, analyzing recorded interference patterns using advanced signal processing equipment. Their analysis revealed that the 3 short, 2 long rhythm pattern contained mathematical precision that suggested artificial rather than natural origins. The timing intervals showed accuracy to within milliseconds, NIST researchers documented in their technical analysis. Natural phenomena don't typically produce such precise timing patterns. The signal characteristics suggested sophisticated electronic generation, but we found no equipment capable of creating effects across such diverse frequency ranges. Investigation efforts continued through 1976, with multiple agencies contributing personnel and equipment to resolve the Wolf Creek Pass interference mystery. All investigations reached similar conclusions: the interference was real, consistent, and unexplainable through known electronic or geological mechanisms. The FCC classified investigation files in January 1977, determining that publication of unexplained electromagnetic phenomena might affect public confidence in electronic communication systems. The interference continued to occur on schedule, but official documentation was restricted to classified reports. Modern digital electronics experience identical interference patterns when crossing Wolf Creek Pass, confirming that the phenomenon affects contemporary technology just as it affected 1970s equipment. GPS navigation systems, satellite radio, and cellular phones all experience the same 3 short, 2 long rhythm pattern during the 2.7-mile crossing. Contemporary truckers and frequent travelers through Wolf Creek Pass have learned to expect the interference as a normal characteristic of the route. CB radio operators refer to the phenomenon as Wolf Creek static and use it as an informal mile marker during mountain crossings. Current electronic warfare specialists from military installations continue to monitor the Wolf Creek Pass interference using automated recording equipment. The data collection remains classified, But the persistence of monitoring suggests ongoing interest in understanding the phenomenon's mechanism or potential security implications. The interference continues with mechanical precision, affecting every electronic device that crosses the specified section of highway. Something invisible and undetectable transforms Wolf Creek Pass into a 2.7-mile zone where electronics respond to signals that register on no spectrum analyzer, following a rhythm that acknowledges no known frequency, but never fails to synchronize every radio, GPS unit, and electronic system, according to its own unwavering pattern of 3 short pulses followed by 2 longer tones, marking time in an electronic language that speaks to all devices but reveals its meaning to none. Seasons follow natural patterns until nature begins drawing lines that acknowledge no calendar but their own. Kenosha Pass crosses the Continental Divide at 10,100 feet above sea level, connecting South Park with the upper South Platte River Valley via United States Highway 285. The pass represents one of Colorado's gentler mountain crossings, with relatively modest grades that make it accessible year-round except during severe winter storms. The route follows a path used by Ute hunting parties and later by miners heading to the Fairplay District during Colorado's gold rush era of the 1860s. The terrain around Kenosha Pass consists of rolling alpine meadows, scattered stands of Engelmann spruce and subalpine fir, and extensive areas of willows and wildflowers during summer months. The elevation places the area just at tree line, creating a transition zone where forest ecosystems give way to alpine tundra. This marginal environment makes vegetation particularly sensitive to seasonal changes, with plants adapting to a short growing season and extreme temperature variations. Botanical surveys of the Kenosha Pass area began in the 1940s when the University of Colorado established research plots to study high-altitude plant communities. The research focused on understanding how vegetation adapts to elevation, seasonal temperature extremes, and the short growing seasons characteristic of Colorado's alpine environments. Scientists documented normal seasonal patterns where plant communities gradually transitioned from summer growth to winter dormancy based on temperature, daylight hours, and moisture availability. The Continental Divide location creates unique microclimates where weather patterns can vary significantly over short distances. However, botanical research established that vegetation changes typically occurred gradually across the landscape, following predictable patterns related to elevation, slope aspect, and soil conditions, rather than abrupt transitions that might suggest unusual environmental factors. On October 15, 1967, University of Colorado botanist Dr. Sarah Martinez discovered something that challenged fundamental understanding of how plant communities respond to seasonal changes. Martinez was conducting routine vegetation monitoring at research plots established throughout the Kenosha Pass area when she noticed an unusual pattern in plant coloration and seasonal development. A perfectly straight line running northeast to southwest across the pass-divided vegetation, showing dramatically different seasonal stages. Plants on the northwest side of the line displayed typical mid-October characteristics, leaves turning golden and brown, stems beginning to die back, and overall preparation for winter dormancy. Plants on the southeast side showed advanced winter conditions, completely dormant stems, brown vegetation, and characteristics typically observed in late November or early December. The transition was absolutely abrupt, Martinez documented in her field notes. On one side of an invisible line, plants showed normal October development. Step across that line, and everything looked like it had been in winter dormancy for weeks. The contrast was so sharp you could draw it on a map. Martinez used surveying equipment to map the precise location of the vegetation transition. The line extended for approximately 3 miles across the pass area, running in a perfectly straight northeast-southwest direction that corresponded to no visible geographic features. elevation changes, or soil type variations. Temperature measurements on both sides of the line showed identical readings. Soil analysis revealed no differences in composition, moisture content, or chemical properties that might explain the dramatic vegetation differences. Weather data indicated that both areas had experienced identical conditions throughout the growing season. Martinez expanded her observations by establishing additional monitoring plots on both sides of the vegetation line. Her measurements confirmed that plants separated by only a few feet showed seasonal development differences equivalent to 6 weeks of normal progression. Dr. Robert Chen, a plant physiologist from Colorado State University, joined the investigation after reviewing Martinez's documentation. Chen focused on understanding the biological mechanisms that might cause such precise spatial differences in plant development. Chen's research involved detailed analysis of plant tissues from both sides of the line, searching for differences in cellular structure, chemical composition, or physiological processes that might explain the accelerated seasonal changes. Laboratory analysis revealed no unusual characteristics in plant samples from either area. The plants appeared completely normal from a physiological standpoint, Chen reported in his research summary. No evidence of disease, unusual stress responses, or abnormal cellular activity. They simply appeared to be following different seasonal schedules despite experiencing identical environmental conditions. Chen expanded his investigation to include continuous monitoring using automated data loggers that recorded temperature, humidity, soil moisture, and light levels at 15-minute intervals throughout the day and night. The data showed no environmental differences between areas on opposite sides of the vegetation line. The Colorado Agricultural Extension Service became involved in the research after ranchers in South Park reported unusual patterns in grazing conditions near Kenosha Pass. Livestock avoided grazing in certain areas, despite the presence of apparently healthy vegetation, creating irregular patterns in pasture utilization. Extension agent Patricia Williams conducted surveys of local ranchers and found consistent reports of cattle behavior changes when grazing near the vegetation line, documented by university researchers. Animals would graze normally up to a certain point, then refuse to cross into areas where vegetation showed advanced seasonal development. The cattle knew something was different, Williams noted in her extension report. They'd graze right up to that invisible line, then turn around and walk away. No amount of herding could get them to cross into areas where the vegetation looked more mature. Williams collaborated with veterinarians to examine livestock for health issues that might explain their grazing behavior, but found no medical problems or stress indicators that could account for their avoidance of specific areas. The United States Forest Service commissioned additional studies in 1971 after the vegetation line phenomenon gained attention in botanical research circles. Forest Service scientists wanted to determine whether the anomaly indicated environmental problems that might affect forest health or recreational use of the area. Dr. Margaret Chen, leading the Forest Service investigation, conducted comprehensive environmental assessments, including soil analysis, water quality testing, and air quality monitoring. All measurements fell within normal ranges for high-altitude environments, with no indicators of pollution, contamination, or unusual chemical conditions. The investigation expanded to include geological surveys, searching for underground features that might create localized environmental effects. Ground-penetrating radar and seismic surveys revealed typical subsurface geology, with no unusual formations, mineral deposits, or structural features that could explain the vegetation patterns. Atmospheric monitoring, using weather balloons and specialized sensors, detected no differences in air temperature, humidity, or atmospheric pressure between areas on opposite sides of the vegetation line. The anomaly appeared to affect plants without creating measurable changes in any environmental parameters that scientific instruments could detect. The National Science Foundation provided funding for expanded research in 1973, hoping to understand the mechanisms behind the Kenosha Pass vegetation anomaly. The multi-year study involved collaboration between multiple universities and government agencies using increasingly sophisticated monitoring equipment. Research teams established permanent observation stations with automated photography systems that documented vegetation changes throughout multiple growing seasons. Time-lapse photography confirmed that the vegetation line appeared with mechanical precision every October 15th, regardless of weather conditions or seasonal temperature variations. The research produced extensive documentation of the phenomenon, but offered no explanations for its cause. Plants continued to follow different seasonal schedules on opposite sides of an invisible line that corresponded to no detectable environmental differences. In 1976, funding for the Kenosha Pass research was quietly discontinued. The National Science Foundation cited budget constraints and the need to redirect resources toward projects with more practical applications for understanding plant ecology and environmental science. Research files were transferred to university archives, where they remained accessible to graduate students and researchers until 1981, when administrative reviews resulted in the documents being reclassified as restricted access pending completion of ongoing studies that were never resumed. Contemporary visitors to Kenosha Pass can observe the vegetation anomaly during autumn months, though most assume the patterns result from normal elevation or microclimate effects. The perfectly straight line dividing different seasonal stages remains visible to trained observers, but attracts little attention from casual hikers or tourists. Modern GPS mapping has confirmed the precise coordinates of the vegetation line, documenting that it maintains identical geographic position year after year. Satellite imagery shows the phenomenon clearly during October and November, when the contrast between different seasonal stages creates visible patterns across the landscape. Current botanical research in Colorado makes no reference to the Kenosha Pass anomaly, focusing instead on climate change impacts and normal ecological processes. The vegetation line continues to appear every October 15th with mechanical precision, but receives no scientific attention or official acknowledgement. The line persists across the alpine landscape of Kenosha Pass, marking an invisible boundary where plants follow different rules of seasonal change. Every October 15th, vegetation divides itself according to a schedule that honors no known environmental factor, creating a geometric pattern that suggests something invisible and undetectable, continues to whisper different instructions about when summer should end and winter should begin, maintaining a boundary that exists only in the language of leaves and stems that understand timing according to principles that measurement cannot detect, but plants obey with absolute precision. The Earth keeps time to rhythms that follow no geological clock ever discovered. Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park encompasses 14 miles of the most dramatic gorge in Colorado, where the Gunnison River has carved a chasm through Precambrian rock formations over 2 million years. The canyon walls rise nearly 3,000 feet above the river, composed of dark, metamorphic, and igneous rock that gives the canyon its distinctive black appearance. The extreme depth and narrow width create an environment of perpetual shadow, where sunlight reaches the canyon floor for only brief periods during midday hours. The canyon's geological complexity attracted scientific attention throughout the 20th century. The exposed rock formations represent some of the oldest material on Earth, with sections dating back nearly 2 billion years. The Precambrian basement rock consists primarily of schist and gneiss intruded by pegmatite dikes, creating a stable geological foundation that has withstood millions of years of erosion with minimal seismic activity. Seismic monitoring of the Black Canyon area began in 1968, when the United States Geological Survey established a network of earthquake detection stations throughout western Colorado. The region's geological stability made it an ideal location for baseline seismic measurements, providing control data for comparison with more active seismic zones. Initial monitoring detected minimal earthquake activity, confirming the area's reputation for geological stability. The canyon's designation as a national monument in 1933 and later as a national park in 1999 brought increased scientific study of its unique geological features. Research focused primarily on erosion patterns, rock formation analysis, and the exceptional preservation of ancient geological structures exposed in the canyon walls. On September 22, 1973, United States Geological Survey seismologist Dr. Robert Martinez detected something that contradicted everything known about the canyon's geological stability. Martinez was analyzing routine seismic data from monitoring stations positioned around Black Canyon when he noticed unusual vibration patterns that appeared consistently across multiple detection sites. The vibrations occurred as micropulses that registered on sensitive seismographic equipment, but fell below the threshold for earthquake classification. The vibrations followed a precise timing pattern, synchronized pulses occurring every 8.3 seconds across all monitoring stations simultaneously. The consistency suggested artificial rather than natural origins, but no mining operations, construction activities, or industrial facilities operated anywhere near the canyon that could generate such regular seismic activity. Martinez expanded his analysis to include data from the previous 12 months, discovering that the 8.3-second vibration pattern had been occurring consistently since monitoring began. The pulses appeared in seismic records dating back to the establishment of the detection network, but had been overlooked as background noise or equipment artifacts. The vibrations were so subtle and regular that we initially dismissed them as electronic interference, Martinez documented in his preliminary report. But when I mapped their distribution, they formed a clear geometric pattern beneath the canyon floor. Natural seismic activity doesn't organize itself into geometric shapes. Martinez used triangulation techniques to determine the source locations of the vibration patterns. The analysis revealed that micropulses originated from multiple points arranged in a grid pattern extending approximately 8 miles along the canyon's length and 3 miles across its width. The grid showed mathematical precision, with vibration sources spaced at regular intervals that formed perfect geometric relationships. More disturbing was the apparent depth of the vibration sources. Seismic analysis indicated that the pulses originated from approximately 1,000 feet below the canyon floor, a depth that placed them several hundred feet below the known geological structure of the area. Geological surveys had established that solid Precambrian bedrock extended only 600 to 700 feet below the river level. Dr. Patricia Chen, a geophysicist from the Colorado School of Mines, joined the investigation after reviewing Martinez's findings. Chen brought sophisticated seismic analysis equipment designed to provide more precise measurements of vibration sources and geological structures. Chen's investigation confirmed Martinez's observations while revealing additional complexities. The vibration grid extended beyond the visible boundaries of Black Canyon, continuing into areas where surface topography showed no relationship to the underground geometric pattern. The pulses maintained identical timing and intensity regardless of surface geological features or seasonal variations. We were looking at something that operated independently of the surface geology, Chen reported in her technical analysis. The vibration sources appeared to exist in a layer of space that shouldn't exist according to our geological surveys. It was like discovering a hidden basement beneath a building that has no basement. Chen attempted to correlate the vibration patterns with known geological processes, underground water movement, thermal expansion, or tectonic stress release. None of these mechanisms could explain the geometric precision or synchronized timing of the pulses. Natural geological processes produce irregular patterns that vary based on local conditions, not geometric grids with mathematical spacing. The Colorado Geological Survey commissioned additional studies in 1974, hoping to identify underground features that might explain the seismic anomalies. Deep core drilling at multiple locations within the vibration grid reached depths of 1,200 feet without encountering the sources of the micropulses. Core samples revealed typical Precambrian rock formations extending to the full depth of drilling operations. No voids, caverns, or unusual geological structures were found that could house mechanisms capable of generating the synchronized vibrations. The pulses appeared to originate from solid rock that showed no evidence of internal activity or structural complexity. Dr. Margaret Williams, leading the expanded geological investigation, commissioned ground-penetrating radar surveys to map subsurface features throughout the canyon area. The radar imaging detected no anomalies, cavities, or structural irregularities that corresponded to the vibration grid pattern. Every investigation technique we used indicated normal, stable geological conditions. Williams documented in her comprehensive report. Yet the seismic equipment continued to detect regular pulses from sources we couldn't locate, arranged in patterns that don't occur in nature. The National Science Foundation provided funding for a multi-year seismic monitoring project beginning in 1975. The project involved installation of an expanded network of sensitive seismometers throughout the Black Canyon region, designed to provide comprehensive mapping of the vibration phenomenon. The expanded monitoring confirmed that the 8.3-second pulse pattern extended far beyond the original detection area. Vibration sources formed a grid pattern covering approximately 120 square miles of southwestern Colorado, with Black Canyon representing only the most concentrated section of activity. The discovery that the vibration grid extended beyond park boundaries raised questions about potential impacts on nearby communities and infrastructure. The National Park Service coordinated with local authorities to assess whether the micropulses posed any risks to buildings, roads, or public safety. Engineering assessments found no evidence that the vibrations affected surface structures or posed safety hazards. The pulses were too subtle to cause structural damage and occurred at frequencies that didn't resonate with typical building materials. The phenomenon appeared to exist independently of surface activities, operating in a geological layer that had no interaction with human infrastructure. Military personnel from nearby installations became involved in the investigation after learning about the geometric nature of the vibration pattern. Classified studies were conducted to determine whether the pulses might indicate unknown underground installations or represent security concerns for the region. The military investigation results remain classified, but unclassified portions of their reports indicated no evidence of artificial construction or foreign installations that could generate the observed seismic activity. The vibration grid appeared to represent a natural phenomenon, operating through mechanisms not understood by current geological science. In 1978, funding for the Black Canyon seismic research was discontinued without explanation. Personnel involved in the investigation received transfers to other projects, and the specialized monitoring equipment was relocated to different seismic research sites throughout the western United States. The National Park Service assumed responsibility for maintaining basic seismic monitoring at Black Canyon using standard earthquake detection equipment that was less sensitive than the research instruments that had originally detected the vibration grid. Official park documentation made no reference to the geometric pulse patterns or the unexplained underground activity. Contemporary seismic monitoring at Black Canyon continues to detect the 8.3-second vibration pattern. Though the phenomenon receives no scientific attention or investigation, modern digital seismometers provide more precise measurements than the equipment used in the 1970s, confirming that the pulses maintain identical timing and geometric distribution patterns documented decades earlier. Current park rangers receive no briefing about the seismic anomalies, and visitor education programs focus on the canyon's visible geological features rather than underground mysteries. The vibration grid operates beneath one of America's most visited national parks without acknowledgement or explanation. The pulses continue with mechanical precision, marking time in the hidden depths beneath Black Canyon, according to a schedule that honors no geological process. Something invisible and undetectable maintains a rhythm that transforms the ancient Precambrian bedrock into an instrument that keeps time to music no human ear can hear, creating synchronized vibrations that suggest the Earth itself is following instructions, written in a language that speaks only in geometric patterns, pulsing every 8.3 seconds through stone that should be silent but never stops, keeping time to a beat that acknowledges no natural drummer.